Chapter 38. After careful planning, Poplar Fruit came up with a two-stage plan. Since he wanted to cut the grass, he had to get rid of the roots. He had to completely eliminate all the hidden dangers. Poplar Fruit not only wanted Brian to be unable to harass Lu Jingyi, but he also planned to secretly knock Brian off his pedestal so that he could no longer appear in this city with his head held high. To complete this two-stage plan, he had to find a person. Fat Dragon. Poplar Fruit's good friend in junior high school. His real name was Long O. Because of his extraordinary figure, everyone called him Fat Dragon. Fat Dragon stopped going to school after graduating from high school. The reason was, am I the one teaching them or are they the one teaching me? His arrogance was reasonable. He taught himself to program. In junior high school, he made a lot of money by writing game cheats. After high school, because of the country's strong crackdown, he stopped and switched to learning hacking. How strong was he now? Poplar Fruit didn't know, but he knew that in high school, Fat Dragon could easily hack a portal and then seal it as his sky. Poplar Fruit and Fat Dragon's friendship began in the second year of junior high school. One time, they changed seats. Poplar Fruit and Fat Dragon sat next to each other. At that time, there were often bullies on campus who asked for protection money from students who looked easy to bully. Fat Dragon was short and fat and looked easy to bully. Poplar Fruit hated evil. He didn't want his deskmate to be bullied, so he fought with those bullies. Although they lost the battle, Poplar Fruit's desperation scared them. From then on, the two sides didn't interfere with each other. Fat Dragon also got rid of the fate of being exploited. Since that incident, Poplar Fruit and Fat Dragon changed from ordinary classmates to close brothers. After so many years, even if they were not in the same city, Poplar Fruit and Fat Dragon still kept in touch. Every time they went home, Fat Dragon would drive Poplar Fruit out to play. One more person had to be mentioned: Poplar Fruit's brother-in-law, Yang Chongguan. Yang Chongguan was Fat Dragon's cousin. In the past, Yang Chongguan sent Fat Dragon to look for Poplar Fruit to play. When he saw Yang Ping, he was shocked. Later, without Poplar Fruit noticing, the two hooked up. Therefore, Fat Dragon and Poplar Fruit could be considered relatives. Just as she dialed Fat Dragon's number, his thick voice came through. Guazi, you're not a good friend. You even gave birth to a daughter, but you didn't tell me. Needless to say, Yang Gua knew that her sister had leaked out Chi-Chi's matter. Haha, you know too? I didn't want my parents to know about this, so I didn't tell anyone. You can't blame me. Poplar Fruit laughed. I don't care, you have to treat me. I want to eat all the seafood in Shui Yifeng Hotel. Fat Dragon shouted on the phone. Okay, when I come home, I'll definitely treat you. Poplar Fruit promised. You're not home? Fat Dragon asked strangely. I thought you came back to play with me. Didn't you resign? Why are you staying in Yongcheng? I have something to do even though I resigned. Moreover, Yongcheng is good in all aspects. When my daughter grows up, it'll be convenient for her to go to school. Guazi, you've been imprisoned by your daughter. Fei Long chuckled. TSK, you're talking about me, aren't you the same? The two of them chatted for a while and finally got back to the main topic. Poplar Fruit told him his idea, and Fat Dragon agreed. The two of them discussed on the phone for a long time, refining Poplar Fruit's plan. Poplar Fruit could hear Fat Dragon's excitement on the phone, and he laughed in his heart. In the past 2 years, Fat Dragon became a lot more serious because his family introduced him to a girlfriend. After not doing bad things for so long, it seems like his hands are itching. After hanging up the phone and translating for a while in front of the computer, Kiki woke up. Poplar Fruit happily prepared hot water for her to take a bath. The hair on Chi-Chi's head had grown a little longer, but it was still a little sparse. The color was pale yellow, and the roots were beginning to show signs of turning black. It was estimated that the little girl would soon turn into a black girl. Poplar Fruit didn't plan to cut Kiki's hair yet. Although there was a custom to cut Kiki's hair when she was 2 months old, it was more scientific to do it when she was 2 months old. The child's skin was thin, and her immune system was weak. If he shaved her hair, it would easily hurt her skin and cause a skin infection. After adjusting the water temperature, Poplar Fruit removed all of Kiki's hair. After washing her little face, Poplar Fruit carried her into the water. The clear and warm water in the pink bathtub was just below Kiki's chest. The little yellow duck floating on the water quickly attracted Kiki's attention. Poplar Fruit held one of Kiki's little arms with one hand and scooped up water to wet her body with the other. Kiki stared at the little yellow duck floating in the water. Her mouth formed an O shape, and her upper lip curled up slightly. It looked so cute. She happily patted the water with her other little hand, wanting to touch the little yellow duck. When Poplar Fruit applied the soap, Kiki raised her head happily, as if saying to her father, "Look, look." When he bathed her, Kiki screamed and laughed. She couldn't stop at all. She couldn't close her mouth and even stuck out her little tongue. A few days ago, because the weather was particularly hot, Kiki's back had a little bit of heat rash. Poplar Fruit immediately became vigilant. Every day when she bathed, he added a little more golden baby water. He also removed the thick quilt from Kiki's bed, leaving only a small blanket to cover her stomach. Usually, after drinking milk, Poplar Fruit would give Kiki a little more water. Now that the heat rash had finally disappeared, Kiki's skin returned to its usual white and smooth state. Bathing in summer was still very comfortable. Kiki played happily in the water, and the little yellow duck was being swam around by her. However, Poplar Fruit wouldn't let her soak in the water for too long. After washing her hair, Poplar Fruit wrapped her in a bath towel and carried her back to the room. The floor was filled with laughter. On the night of May 10th, Poplar Fruit, who was leaning on the sofa armrest and reading, received a call from Duan Xueqing. "Brother Yang." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Xueqing, what's up?" "I have to take my graduation photos tomorrow." Duan Xueqing's voice sounded a little faint, with a hint of resentment. "Brother Yang, you didn't contact me." "Yeah, I remember. I'll go over tomorrow." Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said. He remembered that he said that he would contact her if there was any news about the rental. However, he didn't say that he would contact her before taking his graduation photos. Poplar Fruit originally planned to tell her face to face. "Yeah." Duan Xueqing was silent for a while, then said, "Brother Yang, are you coming with Sister Ran?" Hearing this name, Poplar Fruit said after a long time, "No, I broke up with her." The other end of the phone was silent for a while, then said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have mentioned it." Her tone seemed to be a little higher. To break the stiff atmosphere, Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "It's okay, it's okay. It's all in the past. I have to bring a guest with me tomorrow. It's a surprise, haha." "Yeah, I'll wait and see." Duan Xueqing smiled gently. Since he had already made the call, Poplar Fruit might as well tell her about the apartment. "Xueqing, have you found an apartment yet?" "Not yet. I don't know how to find one." It seemed that the otherworldly Miss Duan still hadn't taken action. Luckily, Poplar Fruit helped her. Otherwise, she would have a headache. "How about you live in my apartment? The one you came to before?" Poplar Fruit smiled. "Ah." Duan Xueqing didn't expect Poplar Fruit to say that. She was like a frightened deer, covering her mouth and screaming. "Oh, it's not what you think." Poplar Fruit realized the mistake in his previous sentence and quickly explained, "What I mean is, I'm going to rent another apartment, and then I'll transfer my current apartment to you. I went to look at the apartment a few days ago. I've already rented the apartment over there. I plan to move there in a few days. Then I remembered that you were going to rent an apartment. My place is very close to your workplace. You've also seen it. The apartment is good, the rent is cheap, the surrounding environment is good, and the neighbors are quite nice. So I thought I might as well transfer it to you. What do you think?" "Yeah," Duan Xueqing said softly. "Brother Yang, your apartment is quite good. Are you really not going to live there?" Yongwu didn't know if he had heard wrongly, but he actually heard a trace of regret hidden in her voice. He probably misheard. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, "Yeah, why don't you come over again when you have time?" Yeah, I like it very much. Duan Shueching said happily. Okay, let's contact each other tomorrow morning when I go to school. Okay, goodbye Brother Yang. Putting down the phone, Poplar Fruit sat silently on the sofa. A figure was floating in his mind. Of course, it wasn't Duan Shueching, but the beautiful figure of Lu Yunran that was brought up by the phone call. I thought I had let go of her. Poplar Fruit looked at the ceiling with melancholy. Because now when he closed his eyes, all he could see was her frown and smile, and her crying face. How is she now? He didn't know why, but he remembered Chen Dixing's long time no see. Chen Dixing's faint sad voice seemed to ring in his ears. How I want to meet you, look at your recent changes, no longer talking about the past, just small talk to say a word to you, just a word long time no see. It really seems like a long time no see. Counting with his fingers, more than a month has passed. Poplar Fruit's heart trembled, and his nose was slightly sour. Even if they quarreled during the Cold War, even if they lived apart, since Poplar Fruit and Lu Yunran fell in love, they had never lost contact for such a long period of time, or even a week. Poplar Fruit still remembered that when they were in their senior year, because of differences in opinion about finding a job, the two of them quarreled until they almost broke up. The next evening, the sky was drizzling. Downstairs in the dormitory, Poplar Fruit tightly hugged Lu Yunran, who was silly and didn't know how to hold an umbrella. Her cold tears were on his face, and their fingers were tightly intertwined behind his back. Yesterday's fierce anger had been extinguished, and the broken cracks had been filled. However, was that stupid girl okay now? Even though he was eager to know her situation, Poplar Fruit didn't hear from her. If there was anything else that he looked forward to the most, Poplar Fruit just wanted to be able to sit with her in a quiet coffee shop again, look at her, talk about recent trivial matters, and ask her if her 3 meals a day were normal. Had it become an extravagant hope? It was like a sweet photo, and only his lonely figure was left. Poplar Fruit sat in a daze, looking up, his eyes unfocused. Some things flowed into his mouth, and it was salty. Unknowingly, his face was covered in tears. Chapter 39. Summer nights were short and days were long. At 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, the sky was already blue. A few white clouds floated lazily in the sky, but they were also dyed a brilliant golden by the warm sun. Poplar Fruit woke Kiki up early to wipe her face and feed her milk. Kiki's eyelids drooped and her mouth was slightly tilted. She leaned her head on Poplar Fruit's chest and didn't want to move. Yanghua used a sling to hold Chi-Chi in front of her chest, and then began to pack. They were going to stay outside for a long time today, so Poplar Fruit had to prepare everything. In addition to a change of diapers and a set of clothes, Poplar Fruit also prepared a small towel for Kiki to wipe her sweat. Clothes were prepared, but food couldn't be left out. Poplar Fruit brought 2 milk bottles. One bottle was filled with water, which could be used to replenish Kiki's water in hot weather. The other bottle was filled with milk powder. In addition, Poplar Fruit also brought a small thermos flask with a pot of hot water, which could be mixed with milk powder for Kiki to drink outside. After everything was ready, Poplar Fruit put a beige lace sun hat on Kiki's head, picked up the bag and umbrella, and went out. Standing at the entrance of his alma mater, Poplar Fruit sighed. After graduation, he had been busy with work. Although they were in the same city, he hadn't been back for almost a year. Higashiyama University, fake name, didn't seem to have changed much. The south gate was still the same. The quaint bricks and tiles gave off a steady atmosphere. However, the group of people entering and leaving the school gate had changed. Walking through the south gate, it was the main axis of Higashiyama University, which ran through the entire campus from north to south. Walking out of the north gate's arch, one could see the mighty Pearl River. Poplar Fruit strolled along the main axis of the campus. Higashiyama University's South Campus was also an old campus with a history of more than 100 years. It was located in the central city of Yongqing. Although it covered a large area, it was a mixture of modern buildings and ancient buildings from the late Qing dynasty, making it feel a little crowded. The main road was a little narrow, and on both sides of it were very old trees that reached into the clouds. The summer sun could only shine through the layers of leaves, sprinkling mottled. There were always a few old buildings with red walls and green tiles hidden in the bushes nearby. Some seemed to be so dilapidated that no one cared about them, while others had been renovated into new teaching buildings. They looked the same from the outside, but when you walked in, it was a completely different world. Walking along the central axis, one could see a neatly trimmed lawn. In the middle of the lawn, there was a flower bed with Higashiyama University's motto and emblem. The motto was fixed by several steel pillars in 5 rows: erudite, inquisitive, cautious, discernible, faithful. If one looked carefully, one would notice that the left side of the word, discernible, was horizontal. It was said that Mr. Sun Wen, the father of the nation, wanted the students of Higashiyama University to open their eyes and see the world. After passing through the small auditorium, there was an even wider lawn in front. This was the place where the students gathered to take their graduation photos after the graduation ceremony. However, today wasn't the day of the graduation ceremony. Duan Xueqing's graduation photos naturally wouldn't be taken here. Behind the lawn, there was a small slope. On the small slope, there was a bronze statue of Mr. Sun Wen and a small pavilion. The pavilion was called Xingting Pavilion, and there was a big stupid clock in the middle. It was also an ancient building with nearly 100 years of history. It was built to commemorate several teachers and students who died in the Shaky Massacre in the 1920s. The sun shone brightly on this grassland, and the lush crowns of the 2 banyan trees formed a dense shade. Bright and bright, it became a place for photography enthusiasts to show off their skills. If the weather was a little warmer in the afternoon, there would be many old people playing with children. Cats and dogs with docile personalities would also be brought by their families. They would chase and play on the lawn. Only when one saw such a harmonious and warm scene, one would understand the meaning of the word happy. Now, there was a couple taking their wedding photos on the lawn. Poplar Fruit smiled as he looked at their sweet appearance. He remembered a piece of news that had been spreading on the internet recently. Higashiyama University's campus was simple and beautiful. It had become the first choice for many newlyweds to take their wedding photos. In order to limit the influx of wedding companies, the university issued a rule. Except for Eastern University's alumni, outsiders who wanted to take their wedding photos must pay a fee of 3,000 yuan. Therefore, many onlookers of Eastern University forwarded this Weibo post and jokingly said, "Marriage saves me 3,000 yuan," or "Marriage saves me 3,000 yuan." Although the 3,000 yuan might not really make the single men and women of Eastern University popular, this rule of Higashiyama University did make the students of Eastern University feel a real sense of belonging. Even if they left the school, their alma mater would never reject their children. Who knew if the couple on the lawn were Eastern University's alumni? Poplar Fruit smiled as he turned right to the path on the right. This path led to Higashiyama University's dormitory area. The road to Higashiyama University's South Campus was very narrow. This path could only accommodate 2 cars. Along the winding path, there were a few red brick houses with unknown names in the bushes beside it, giving people a heavy sense of history. If it weren't for the various stadiums, badminton courts, and basketball courts that could be seen, it would really make people feel as if they had traveled back in time to the Republic of China. The number of students here began to increase. Some of them excitedly stepped on their brand new bicycles and passed by Poplar Fruit in a flash. Some of them carried their backpacks and books and hurriedly walked. They were probably rushing to class. Poplar Fruit raised his hand and looked at his watch. It was indeed time for class. A few girls boldly looked at the tall and straight Poplar Fruit and the child in his arms. They laughed and whispered, not knowing which of their companions they were teasing. From the small path to the lakeside of the East Lake, camphor trees, redbud, and king coconut trees surrounded the path, completely covering the winding white path by the lakeside. Walking on the path, perhaps in the next step, one would be pleasantly surprised to find a smooth stone bench in the bushes. There were only 2 newly fallen leaves on it. It was clean. It wasn't hard to imagine that there might be a diligent student reading on this stone bench. Perhaps the residual warmth on it hadn't completely dissipated. The lotus flowers in the lake were about to bloom. The dark green lotus leaves were like an inverted umbrella, densely covering the lake water. The pink flower bud in the middle opened a small mouth. After a while, the blooming lotus flowers here would be so beautiful that it would intoxicate people. There was a slim and graceful girl by the lake. She wore a pink-blue dress. The sleeves of the dress couldn't cover her slender lotus arms. Reflecting the starry sun, her slightly wheat-colored skin revealed a healthy glow. Her beautiful hair just reached her shoulders, but the hair floating in the wind seemed to have a faint fragrance in the air. Poplar Fruit was a little absent-minded. It was as if he had returned to that spring 2 years ago. At that time, he and Lu Yunran sat side by side on the stone bench, chatting sweetly. Suddenly, Lu Yunran stood up with a smile. She walked to the lake and opened her arms. She looked intoxicated, as if she wanted to embrace the sparkling spring water in front of her. Poplar Fruit's heart moved. He stood up and walked forward. Holding his girlfriend's willowy waist with both hands, he pulled her into his embrace from behind. At that moment, both of their hearts were filled with happiness. At that moment, Poplar Fruit only wanted to be together forever. At that moment, the fragrance of Lu Yunran's hair seemed to linger in his nose. That moment had long become a memory that could only be recalled. The girl in front of him was carrying a large camera bag. She was holding a DSLR camera and taking photos happily. Poplar Fruit was observing her. He stopped in his tracks. He didn't notice that the girl suddenly put down the DSLR camera and turned around. When she raised her head, their eyes met. She had a goose-egg-shaped face, white teeth, red lips, and a jade-like nose. Her eyes sparkled like stars, and her eyebrows were slender like willow leaves. She had a soul-stirring beauty without any makeup. Even the lotus flowers in the East Lake behind her couldn't be compared to her. If the scene in front of him was a painting, then it must be this girl who decorated the midsummer. So beautiful. Poplar Fruit couldn't help but praise in his heart. The hair on the girl's forehead was wet with sweat. It curled and stuck to her delicate skin. It looked very charming. Poplar Fruit was a little embarrassed that his peeping was discovered. He put his left hand on his daughter's small shoulder and scratched his head with his right hand. He looked embarrassed. The girl's bright eyes turned. She giggled and said, "Uncle, does the child's mother know that you like to look at beautiful girls so much?" What a mischievous girl. Poplar Fruit was deflated. He didn't know how to answer. "Uncle, although you are so handsome, if you look at me like this, I will blush." The girl finally learned a little Taiwanese accent. After she said that, she covered her mouth and laughed. Poplar Fruit was also infected by her laughter. The trace of sadness in his eyes was replaced by a smile. However, Poplar Fruit was a little embarrassed by her calling him uncle. How old was he? How could he go up a generation so quickly? He cupped his hands and begged for mercy with a smile. "Please let me go. I'm just in my early 20s. Uncle, can't you bear this? You're not young, right? You're just in your early 20s? The girl stretched out 2 slender fingers and said with a look of disbelief, "How many are you in your early 20s? 7, 8, or 10? I'm not that old," Poplar Fruit said with grievance. "I just graduated from here last year. I'm only 23 years old this year." "Right. I'm not much older than you, right?" "Humph. Older is older. You're an uncle, a strange uncle." The girl raised her nose and said unreasonably. Poplar Fruit was helpless. He didn't want to be entangled in this issue. The girl rolled her eyes. She leaned over and tapped Poplar Fruit's arm and said, "Uncle, you graduated from Eastern University. You must know where Yongfong Hall is, right?" Poplar Fruit's nose moved. He seemed to smell the fragrance of jasmine. The girl saw it and muttered, "Strange uncle." She took 2 steps back. "Well, I know," Poplar Fruit said. He rubbed his nose awkwardly. "Then, can you point it out to me?" The girl looked at Poplar Fruit with hope. "You want to go there?" Poplar Fruit said with a frown. "It's a little far." The girl said in a low voice, "I heard that Yongfong Hall has a lot of strange legends. The number of stairs there is different during the day and at night." Then her voice suddenly rose a few pitches. She happily said, "It's such a fun place." "Of course, I want to see it." Poplar Fruit looked at her gloomily. Just a moment ago, she was like a fairy who came out of a painting. Now, she had become a curious little witch. He was really deceived by her gentle and quiet appearance. "Those are all rumors. They can't be trusted. They have been refuted a long time ago." Poplar Fruit shook his head. "If you want to see it, I'll take you to see it." The girl made an exaggerated look of fear. She looked at him with a strange face and said, "Strange uncle, don't tell me you want to kidnap me to see the goldfish." Chapter 40. Poplar Fruit's forehead hung a few thick black lines. He said angrily, "If it weren't for the fact that the Eastern University campus is too difficult to find, I wouldn't have brought you there." Seeing that she didn't believe him, Poplar Fruit explained, "You have to go this way, turn right, walk along Kangle Road to the small auditorium, then turn left, walk along the path to the intersection, then turn right, then go straight, and turn right at the first intersection." Okay, it's quite messy." The girl in the long dress was dizzy. She covered her head and said, "Strange uncle, please help me lead the way, okay?" Poplar Fruit's face showed a victorious smile, but he quickly covered it up. It wouldn't be good if she saw it. Yongwu decided to help her to the end. Seeing that it was not time for the photo shoot yet, she took her back the way they came. On the way, the girl in the long dress was like a bird that had been locked in a cage for a long time, chattering non-stop. From time to time, she pulled Poplar Fruit and Kiki to take photos together. Poplar Fruit discussed with her, "Hey, can you not call me strange uncle?" The girl walked backward in front of Poplar Fruit with her hands behind her back. She looked into his eyes and said with a smile, "No, you are a strange uncle. I'll call you strange uncle, hee hee." Poplar Fruit had no choice but to take a step back and said, "Then why don't you remove the word strange? People on the road heard it and thought I did something to you." The girl looked at Poplar Fruit and rolled her eyes. She touched her chin and said, "It's not that you can't, but—" She dragged the last syllable. "But what?" Poplar Fruit asked. "But you have to let me hold the baby." The girl laughed. No, Kiki is too small. You can't hold her." Poplar Fruit shook his head decisively. "How do you know I can't?" The girl said angrily, "My brother let me carry his child as soon as he was born. I even helped take care of their child after school." Poplar Fruit saw that she insisted on hugging him, so he came up with a plan and said, "Well, I'll stand here and don't move. If you can make Kiki want to be hugged by you, then I have no objection." "All right. It's up to her to decide whether she can or not." The girl placed her hands on her waist and said confidently, "No problem. Weird uncle, don't go back on your word." Poplar Fruit nodded and laughed in his heart. Kiki had always only recognized her father. No one had ever made her take the initiative to ask for a hug. The girl put the SLR back into the camera bag, then put it behind her, clapped her hands, and walked to Poplar Fruit. "The baby is so cute." She looked at Kiki's little face and stretched out her smooth arms. She smiled and said, "Baby, can I hug you?" The girl's breath smelled like orchids, and Poplar Fruit, who was far away from her, felt a delicate fragrance enter his nose. He looked down at the girl who was close to him. The powder blue dress wasn't fancy, but it was simple and elegant. Because of her height, Poplar Fruit could observe her hair from the top of her head. It was black and soft, just like the shampoo commercials on TV. Her hair was clear, smooth, and shiny, without any split ends. Although it only reached her shoulders, it still made people's hearts beat faster. What was he thinking? Poplar Fruit shook his head and realized that he was thinking too much. When he came back to his senses, Poplar Fruit realized that under the gentle guidance of the girl who looked like a little white flower in front of him, Kiki, who was sitting quietly in her father's arms and enjoying the scenery, had also turned her attention to her. Kiki's expression became a little restless. In the end, she burst into a smile and stretched out her little arms, wanting to lean on the girl in the long dress. "No way. This doesn't make sense." For the first time in history, Kiki stretched out her hands to an outsider. Poplar Fruit realized that his plan had failed. Frustrated, Poplar Fruit untied the straps and carefully handed Kiki into the arms of the girl in the long dress. The girl in the long dress didn't lie. She really knew how to hold a baby. Poplar Fruit watched from the side and was relieved. The girl in the long dress smiled brightly, not because she had won against Poplar Fruit, but because she was happy from the bottom of her heart. It looked like a mother's happy smile when holding a child. Chi-Chi also giggled. She laid on the girl's slightly bulging chest, her right hand pressing on the curvaceous and enchanting buttocks, making Yongguo a little jealous. "Kiki, baby, is your name Kiki?" The girl rubbed her face against Kiki's little face and looked into her eyes. Of course, Chi-Chi didn't understand. She kept saying strange syllables. As her father, Yongguo took on the responsibility of translating. He said, yes, her name is Chi-Chi. Her full name is Yong Luochi. The Luo next to the Wong character, and the Chi next to the Wong character. "Kiki, your name is so beautiful. Sister is Fong Bei Bei, you can call Sister Bei Bei." The girl laughed. However, Kiki just waved her little arms excitedly and continued to babble. "So her name is Fong Bei Bei." Fong Bei Bei leaned over to Kiki's little face and kissed it. Then, she turned her face to Kiki and said, "Kiki, give sister a kiss too." Poplar Fruit was about to say that Kiki didn't know how to kiss, but he was shocked to see Kiki's mouth move over. Although the action was a little irregular and couldn't be considered a real kiss, it was still a light touch on Fong Bei Bei's face. Poplar Fruit felt like he was going crazy. Was this still his precious daughter, Kiki? Her first kiss was given to a completely unfamiliar girl. Poplar Fruit's heart was crying. Why didn't she kiss him back, even though he kissed her so many times? Fong Bei Bei also didn't expect Kiki to be so obedient. She was pleasantly surprised when she was kissed. She leaned her head against Kiki and smiled, revealing 2 shallow dimples at the corner of her mouth. The beauty's smile was like a flower. Poplar Fruit was stunned again. Fong Bei Bei turned her body, her but facing Poplar Fruit, and said, "Uncle, quickly take a picture of me and Kiki with my dessert." The satin skirt wrapped around her waist, forming a beautiful arc. She finally had a conscience and didn't call him a strange uncle anymore. Poplar Fruit resisted the urge to slap her, opened the camera bag on her perky butt, and took out the DSLR. Although he didn't really have a DSLR, Poplar Fruit used to play with his classmates, so he opened the camera cover with ease and turned on the DSLR. He closed his left eye, put his right eye on the viewfinder, and adjusted the focus of the lens with his left hand. Poplar Fruit first took a picture to adjust the ISO and aperture. Then he faced Kiki and Fong Bei Bei, ready to take a picture. Fong Bei Bei and Kiki were having a lot of fun. They kissed each other, and their faces were smeared with each other's saliva. Poplar Fruit caught the moment Kiki kissed her and pressed the shutter. Looking at the effect on the screen, Poplar Fruit was a little absent-minded. In the picture, Kiki's eyes were like crescent moons, and her mouth was pressed against Fong Bei Bei's beautiful cheek. Fong Bei Bei was also smiling sweetly. The hair near her ear was not tied up, and a few strands of hair were wet and stuck to the place where Kiki had kissed before. What could be more brilliant than the smiles of these 2 girls? Even the red flowers and green willows behind her paled in comparison. Poplar Fruit not only helped to take the picture, but also helped to hold the umbrella to shield the 2 girls from the sun. He walked and asked, "Fong Bei Bei, you are not a student of Eastern University, right?" Guess. Fong Bei Bei did not raise her head and only focused on teasing Kiki. "Definitely not, otherwise, how could you not know where Yongfong Tang is?" "Who said so?" Eastern University has 4 campuses. Those who attend classes in other campuses may not know. Fong Bei Bei said. Poplar Fruit looked at her in surprise. She knew so much about Eastern University. She was not simple. However, Poplar Fruit was not scared. He shook his head and said, "No, you don't have the feeling of Eastern University. You are dressed like a tourist. You must not be a student of Eastern University." "Haha, you only guessed half right. I am not a student of Eastern University now, but I am already a student of Eastern University.
Huh?
Are you a graduate student who just got admitted this year? Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. He thought about it carefully, shook his head and said, "No, you can't be a graduate student. You are too young. Just by listening to you, I can tell that you are from the 90s. Poplar Fruit suddenly remembered that Fong Bei Bei said that she would help her brother and sister-in-law take care of the children after school. How could a college student say, after school? Poplar Fruit suddenly realized and said, "You are a high school student." "No, you are a high school student who was admitted in advance."
Right.
Only a high school student who was admitted in advance by independent enrollment would be sure that they entered Eastern University at this time. Fong Bei Bei looked back at Poplar Fruit in surprise and said, "Uncle, how did you guess?" Poplar Fruit explained, "The college entrance examination has just ended. You are so confident that you have been admitted to Eastern University. Either you are a super scholar who completely ignored the college entrance examination, or you have been admitted by independent enrollment. But it is unlikely that a super scholar would choose Eastern University as their first choice, so it can only be the latter. Am I right? Fong Bei Bei, little junior sister." "Well, you found out. Don't call me little junior sister, weird uncle." Fong Bei Bei pouted and buried her head to play with Kiki. Happy times are always a little short. After a few turns, the path came to an end. Yongfang Hall also appeared in front of them. It was time to say goodbye. Of course, the ones who had to say goodbye were Kiki and Fong Bei Bei. Poplar Fruit continued to be ignored. Fong Bei Bei reluctantly hugged Kiki and said something. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and stood aside. He didn't know what to say. He felt that his heart was somewhat reluctant. At this time, the phone in his trouser pocket suddenly vibrated. Poplar Fruit quickly took it out. It was Duan Xueqing. "Hello, Xueqing. Brother Yang, where are you?" Duan Xueqing said briskly. "I'll be there soon. I'm going to your dormitory now," Poplar Fruit said. "You don't have to come to my dormitory," Duan Xueqing quickly said. "We are at the big clock tower. Brother Yang, you can just come here directly." "Okay, wait for me for 10 minutes. I'll be there soon." "Well, see you later. Bye." After putting down the phone, Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said to Fong Bei Bei, who was still reluctant to part, I have to go now." Fong Bei Bei reluctantly returned Kiki to Poplar Fruit, and then took the DSLR from Poplar Fruit's hands. Poplar Fruit tied Kiki back to the strap in front of his chest. His mouth moved as if he wanted to say something, but he didn't say it. In the end, he just waved goodbye to Fong Bei Bei. Poplar Fruit walked a few meters away. Fong Bei Bei suddenly shouted from behind with her hands in the shape of a trumpet, "Uncle, thank you." Poplar Fruit turned back and waved at her. Then, he continued to walk in the direction of the big clock tower. Kiki looked up at her father and patted her father's chest with her hand. It seemed that she wanted to express something. Poplar Fruit touched her head. His voice was a little low. He said softly, "There's no chance. Kiki, we are not on the same path as Sister Bei Bei after all. We probably won't meet again in the future. Just treat it as a beautiful encounter." Chapter 41. Before they reached the clock tower, Poplar Fruit saw Duan Xueqing and the girls in her dorm. From afar, it was a blue sky and black earth. They were all wearing costumes from the Republic of China. Costumes from the Republic of China were the most popular graduation photos. Higashiyama University was founded by the founding father of the Republic of China, and the buildings from the late Qing dynasty were still intact. Therefore, wearing costumes from the Republic of China for graduation photos had become popular in the past 2 years. Poplar Fruit didn't do this when he graduated last year. At that time, he just asked a few friends to pose for the photo, so it wasn't worth mentioning. Before Poplar Fruit could greet them, the boss of Duan Xueqing's dorm, the hot Sichuan girl Ma Yonghong, saw him and shouted happily, "Senior Poplar Fruit is here." The girls all turned around, and 6 pairs of beautiful eyes fell on Poplar Fruit and the child in Poplar Fruit's chest. Suddenly, everyone fell into silence with different expressions on their faces. Ma Yonghong, Su Luanyu, and the 3 other poplar fruit girls whose names Poplar Fruit didn't know were all surprised or confused. Duan Xueqing still maintained her cold expression, but her eyes seemed to have lost their light. What's wrong? Everyone stopped talking when I came. Are you hiding some secrets? Poplar Fruit walked over and said with a smile. Ma Yonghong, who had a fierce personality, retorted, What secrets do we have? Senior brother, you, on the other hand, came back with a child without saying anything. Let me see. She went up and looked at it seriously, saying, The little girl looks like you. Senior brother, hurry up and explain. The other girls also surrounded them and looked at the Kiki in Poplar Fruit's arms. They chattered non-stop, forcing Poplar Fruit to explain clearly. Duan Xueqing didn't follow. She stood quietly at the back, like a solitary flower in the mortal world. Poplar Fruit stood in the circle of girls and looked at Duan Xueqing across the crowd. He nodded slightly as a greeting. The girls pulled Poplar Fruit and insisted that he explain the cause and effect of having a child. The fire of gossip was burning fiercely. Poplar Fruit raised his hands in surrender and said to the girls around him with a bitter smile, I'll tell you, I'll be honest, okay? First of all, this is indeed my daughter, my biological daughter, Yang Luoqi. Poplar Fruit's words caused a commotion. He lowered his head and said to Kiki, Kiki, say hello to the sisters. Kiki didn't know if it was because she was tired from playing with Fong Bei or something else, but she was a little dispirited. She pouted and leaned her head on her father's chest, unwilling to pay attention to the disturbance of the outside world. Poplar Fruit scratched his head awkwardly. Kiki is so cute. Su Luanyu smiled and said, But she looks less than a year old, right? Yeah, it's only been a month, Poplar Fruit replied. The girls began to ask about the origin of the matter again. Poplar Fruit had to give a simple explanation. Hearing that Wu Yu left this world because of a difficult birth, the girls covered their mouths and cried. Even the shrewish Ma Yonghong said with red eyes, She lost her mother at such a young age. Kiki is so pitiful. There was a girl who was more soft-hearted and cried. She wiped her tears and said, I think that Kiki's mother is also pitiful. She didn't even see her child and left. It's not easy to be a woman, woo-woo. Seeing that the atmosphere was getting worse, everyone was supposed to be happy to take graduation photos. Now that everyone's makeup was ruined, how could their eyes be red? Poplar Fruit quickly clapped his hands and focused everyone's attention. He said, What are you sad about? Didn't everyone see that I'm fine with my daughter? This shows that us men are not worse than you women. Right, haha. Che. The women despised Poplar Fruit with their eyes and gestures, then they scattered and touched up each other's makeup. Duan Xueqing walked to Poplar Fruit at this time and whispered, Brother Yang. She was wearing a sky-blue jacket with vertical collar buttons, a black lacquered skirt, and a pair of black canvas shoes. Coupled with her fairy-like face and waist-length hair, Yang Guo felt that the girl in front of her was like an ancient lady who had walked out of a painting. She was so beautiful that people didn't dare to look at her. You are so beautiful today, Poplar Fruit said with appreciation. Duan Xueqing said with her head down and her toes rubbed the ground. Brother Yang, you really brought a surprise today. There seemed to be a hint of complaint in her tone. Poplar Fruit couldn't tell. You mean Kiki? Poplar Fruit scratched his head and smiled. I didn't know everyone's reaction was so strong. But because she didn't want to leave my side, I brought her along. No, I also think that Kiki is very cute. Duan Xueqing looked at Kiki and said, Do you want to hug her? Poplar Fruit asked. Yes, can I? The girl's calm and beautiful eyes revealed a hint of hope. Of course you can. Poplar Fruit signaled her to do it herself. Duan Xueqing opened her hands, but Kiki didn't appreciate it. She turned her head and turned her back to her. Poplar Fruit had to comfort her. She is a little afraid of strangers. What is afraid of strangers? Where did her passionate interaction with Fong Bei go? Poplar Fruit took her out of his arms and handed her to Duan Xueqing. Fortunately, Kiki didn't resist too much. But even though Duan Xueqing tried hard to make her happy, Kiki's expression didn't show as happy as before. Poplar Fruit comforted Kiki and told her to be good and not cry. Daddy will be back soon. He took the men's clothes from the Republic of China that Duan Xueqing handed to him and ran to the bathroom to change. Because he was afraid that Kiki would make a fuss when she didn't see him, Poplar Fruit changed quickly. He didn't have time to look in the mirror and ran out. Sure enough, Kiki, who was in Duan Xueqing's arms, had started to become cloudy and cloudy. Poplar Fruit hurriedly took Kiki from the helpless Duan Xueqing so that she didn't cry. Because he was in such a hurry, Poplar Fruit didn't have time to look in the mirror. A few buttons on his shirt weren't buttoned properly and his collar was folded inside. Duan Xueqing hesitated for a moment before she walked over to Poplar Fruit. She stood on her tiptoes and helped him tidy up his collar and sleeves. Poplar Fruit's hand that was patting Kiki's back froze. He didn't expect his junior sister to do such an intimate action. Poplar Fruit glanced at her focused expression as she folded his collar. He looked around and relaxed when he saw that no one was watching. Now that the other girls' partners were here, they were all acting more intimate with each other. They didn't have time to pay attention to Poplar Fruit's situation. Yang Guo had thought that it was a group photo taken by friends and family, or a group photo taken by a few people. But it didn't seem like that. It seemed that the men and women present were one-to-one. Other than those who were obviously boyfriend and girlfriend, the others were a little ambiguous. Duan Xueqing wanted him to be her partner. What was going on? Poplar Fruit felt that his brain wasn't working well. He didn't want to think about it if he couldn't figure it out. Now that he took a closer look, Poplar Fruit realized that all 6 girls in Duan Xueqing's dormitory were beauties. Of course, the others couldn't be compared to Duan Xueqing, who was like a snow lotus on an iceberg. But they were still plum orchids and autumn chrysanthemums. They each had their own advantages. Duan Xueqing fixed his collar and buttons and quickly backed away. She felt her cheeks were a little hot. She wondered if she was too bold. When she saw that Poplar Fruit didn't notice, she secretly sighed in relief. But she also felt a little disappointed. After everyone changed their clothes, they gathered together. Among the boys, Poplar Fruit seemed to be the most outstanding. He seemed to have grown a little taller recently. His slender thighs were fully displayed in the black Dongshan suit. Poplar Fruit's figure was neither thin nor strong. His waist was straight and his shoulders were broad and strong. The lines of his cheeks were a little strong, but it couldn't hide the lethality of his sharp eyebrows. If one were to say that Yang Guo's physique was revealed after he practiced the Zhang Sanfeng inner martial technique, then his sharp and thick eyebrows and eyes that were as deep as the night sky were the greatest advantages that he inherited from his parents. It could be said that Lu Yunran was willing to consider Poplar Fruit as her suitor because Poplar Fruit's eyes were too handsome. It was just that Poplar Fruit's figure and temperament weren't as outstanding as they were now. Usually, he dressed more casually, so no one noticed. Now that Poplar Fruit was wearing the Dongshan suit that was very suitable for Chinese men, the aura of a male god suddenly hit them in the face. The other girls looked at Poplar Fruit with stars in their eyes. When it was time to take the graduation photos, Poplar Fruit asked a girl who came to help take care of Kiki. Then, he stood in the crowd and listened to Ma Yonghong's instructions. The first photo was relatively normal. The girls stood in front and the boys stood behind. This photo was taken very smoothly. The second photo was of the girls hugging their male partner's arms and lining up in a row. Those who had confirmed their relationship naturally hugged each other sweetly. A few couples who hadn't confirmed their relationship were also in a good position. Poplar Fruit felt a little awkward. He raised his hand stiffly and looked at Duan Xueqing, waiting for her next move. Duan Xueqing also looked at Poplar Fruit awkwardly. The two of them were silent. Duan Xueqing bit her lower lip and lowered her head. Her flowing bangs covered her eyes and expression. She took a step forward and reached out to hug Poplar Fruit's right arm. Then, the two of them pressed together. Poplar Fruit felt that his expression, from the expression on his face to the tips of his toes, were all stiff. Although it wasn't that he hadn't hugged a woman before, the feeling that Duan Xueqing gave him was completely different from Lu Yunran's. It made him feel a little strange. Moreover, what was with the warm and soft touch on his arm? Poplar Fruit felt like his brain had stopped working. After the muddle-headed Poplar Fruit finished taking the photo, he heard Ma Yonghong say with a mischievous smile, "Now, guys, line up on the steps and sit down in a row. Then, let the girls sit on your laps." This was playing with fire. Poplar Fruit felt like he couldn't keep up with the thoughts of his junior sisters who were only 1 year younger than him. Fine, he had to listen to her instructions. Poplar Fruit sat on the steps. Duan Xueqing sat down with a red face, causing a commotion among the girls next to her. Poplar Fruit only felt a warm and fragrant jade in his arms. Her clothes were smooth, and her body was soft and boneless. It made him feel a little dazed. But for some reason, even though the fragrance filled his nose, Poplar Fruit couldn't help but think of Fong Bei Bei, that fairy-like girl who had just separated from him. It took a while to take the photo because a few couples couldn't get it right. Poplar Fruit also hugged Duan Xueqing for a long time. This made him blush and feel very awkward. He hoped that it would be over soon. He didn't know how many boys would want to smash him to death if this idea of his spread out. He had taken advantage of her, yet he was still pretending to be obedient. After that, they changed locations to take a few creative photos. The rest was to take photos of their respective groups. Although a few girls took turns to take photos with Poplar Fruit, everyone still praised Poplar Fruit and Duan Xueqing. The man was handsome, and the woman was gorgeous. No matter how you looked at it, they were a golden couple. Chapter 42. Back home, Poplar Fruit woke up Song Jiwen, who was dozing off on the sofa. Oh, who is it?" Song Jiwen said in a daze. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "Who else? I thought you were doing your job to help me look after Kiki, but it turns out you were slacking off. Lao Gua, you're back." Song Jiwen wiped his sleepy eyes and said embarrassedly, "I accidentally fell asleep while sitting. By the way, how are you? Is it done?" "It's done, I have the evidence." Poplar Fruit laughed and took out a digital camera to show Song Jiwen. Song Jiwen immediately became energetic and said excitedly, "Let me see." Poplar Fruit threw the camera to him and said, "Be careful not to delete it." He was too lazy to care about this guy and pushed open the bedroom door to take care of Kiki. Kiki's appetite had increased greatly recently, more than twice as much as when she was just born. The number of times he fed her every day didn't increase, but the amount he fed her at one time was a lot more. If she wasn't full, Kiki would bite the pacifier tightly and not let go, so Poplar Fruit had to be well prepared every time. Poplar Fruit was also preparing to buy some nutrient powder to supplement vitamins and mineral elements according to the book in a few days, and feed Kiki with milk powder. He also hoped that she could grow up with a balanced nutrition and grow into a healthy and smart child in the future. The next day, Song Jiwen still had to go to work, so he went home after looking at the photos. Song Jiwen, who had seen countless movies, was no longer interested in photos of this standard. Before he left, he made an agreement with Poplar Fruit to move together on the weekend. A few days ago, Poplar Fruit took the opportunity to talk to his godparents about renting a house. Just as he expected, with Poplar Fruit renting together, Song Chunfong and Lu Suqin still agreed to let Song Jiwen move out. In fact, the new house wasn't very far from where they lived. It was only a 20-minute drive. They didn't even need to drive on weekends. If they were free, they could go home for dinner. After a long night, Poplar Fruit finished his breakfast and sent the photos from last night to Fat Dragon. Fat Dragon would erase the original EXIF information from the photos and send them to the company's boss and other bosses along with the evidence of Brian's leaking of company secrets. With such conclusive evidence, even if the boss wanted to, he would not be able to protect his traitorous nephew. After sending the photos, Poplar Fruit took the household register, Kiki's birth certificate, and her BCG and hepatitis B vaccination cards. Then, he took Kiki to the 3rd Provincial Hospital. Today, he was going to take Kiki to apply for a vaccination certificate. Usually, it was applied within a month of birth, but it was delayed here. This certificate was the proof of Kiki's future vaccination records. Without this, Kiki would not be able to enjoy the national compulsory immunization-free vaccines in the future. Moreover, this thing was also known as the baby's health ID card. In the future, many procedures such as enrolling in school would require it. Logically speaking, Poplar Fruit should apply for it in the pediatric department of a nearby hospital. However, wasn't Poplar Fruit going to move? The large hospital near where he was going to live in the future was the 3rd Provincial Hospital. What a coincidence. Poplar Fruit felt that this was the best. After all, the standard of the 3rd Provincial Hospital was indeed much better than ordinary street hospitals. Moreover, there were acquaintances in the hospital. Before going to the hospital, Poplar Fruit first went to buy a large box of navel oranges. He was always troubling head nurse Jiang, so it would not be right if he did not express his gratitude. When they arrived at the hospital, Poplar Fruit first went to head nurse Jiang's office. When head nurse Jiang saw that he was carrying a box of fruits, her face darkened as she scolded him. "Why did you have to bring things over? Do you have too much money to spend?" Head nurse Jiang scolded him right to his face. She said that it was not easy for a single father to raise a child, and that he was spending money like crazy. What would happen to Kiki? Kiki was also frightened. She hid her little head in her father's arms, not daring to poke it out. Poplar Fruit obediently accepted her scolding. When head nurse Jiang took a break, he smiled and explained, "Auntie Jiang, ever since Kiki was born, you've been helping me with so many things. I don't know how to thank you." He pointed at the box of navel oranges and said, "My current job actually pays quite a lot. This box of oranges is not worth much, so I can still afford it. Really, Auntie Jiang, don't worry and accept it. Just treat it as a small token of my appreciation." To be honest, Poplar Fruit now had a monthly income of 50,000 to 60,000 yuan, not including the crazy 100,000 yuan last month. He could afford to buy even the best gift. It was not that Poplar Fruit was stingy and did not want to spend more money. It was mainly because head nurse Jiang was a relatively upright person. She would definitely not accept expensive things. Poplar Fruit persuaded head nurse Jiang in every way possible before she reluctantly accepted it. Although she accepted it, she carried the oranges, walked to the door, and called a nurse. She said, "Xiao Yu, come here. Poplar Fruit brought this. Take it and share it with everyone." The nurse took the oranges and smiled at Poplar Fruit. Then, she happily walked to the on-call room. Poplar Fruit's admiration for head nurse Jiang grew. Head nurse Jiang asked him why he was at the hospital today. Poplar Fruit told head nurse Jiang why he was there. Head nurse Jiang said in surprise, "That's not right. You didn't apply for the certificate at our hospital. The address you registered at that time was not in our area." Poplar Fruit quickly took out his rental contract and showed it to head nurse Jiang. "Teske, Poplar Fruit, you really made a lot of money. You can even afford to rent in Jinli district," head nurse Jiang said with a smile. No, I'm also a hard-working farmer who writes novels," Poplar Fruit said modestly. "Okay then. Since you moved here, you can apply for the certificate here." Head nurse Jiang returned the contract to Poplar Fruit and stood up. "I'll take you there." Poplar Fruit quickly waved his hand and said, "Auntie Jiang, I don't need to trouble you with such a small matter. I can go there myself. I came here today mainly because I wanted to visit you." Head nurse Jiang did not insist. The certificate was not troublesome. She pointed the way for Poplar Fruit and let him go to the child care department. After waiting in line for a while and going through a few procedures, Poplar Fruit finally received a small green booklet from the doctor. The words, "Immunization and Vaccination Certificate," were written in white. Below the booklet were the words, "Preschool, Kindergarten, and School Admission Certificate," in small brackets. To be honest, the certificate was not very eye-catching. However, Poplar Fruit still happily put it away. This was a guarantee for Kiki's health in the future. Before leaving, the doctor repeatedly reminded Poplar Fruit that when the child was 2 months old, he must remember to bring her to receive the polio vaccination. The polio vaccine was what people usually called a sugar pill. Don't ignore this oddly named vaccine. Polio also had a notorious nickname, polio. This disease was caused by a child's spinal cord and spinal nerves being infected by the virus. If it was not treated properly, the muscles in the lower limbs would atrophy and deform, resulting in lifelong disability. Poplar Fruit did not want to regret it for the rest of his life. He nodded repeatedly and firmly remembered the doctor's instructions in his heart. In the afternoon, Duan Shueching came to look at the house. When he opened the door, Poplar Fruit's eyes lit up. Duan Shueching wore a wide-brimmed lace sun hat on her head, a simple short-sleeved t-shirt on her upper body, and pure white casual pants that accentuated her long slender legs. Although this outfit was not luxurious, it reflected Duan Shueching's natural temperament. Her entire body was plain white, like a blooming magnolia flower, pure and dazzling. Poplar Fruit smiled and welcomed Duan Shueching in. Duan Shueching followed Poplar Fruit and looked at the furniture in the house. The quilt on the bed was folded neatly, the books on the desk were neatly arranged, the coffee table and dining table were spotless, and the pots and pans could be used as mirrors. Duan Shueching couldn't believe that this house was actually lived by a man. Duan Shueching looked at Poplar Fruit with her beautiful eyes and asked, "Isn't it good to live here?" "Why, it's fine for me to live alone," Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "but don't I have Kiki? I want to change to a better environment for her, with better lighting and a more comfortable life." Duan Shueching said with a burning gaze, "Brother Yang, where are you moving to?" "Jinli District in the X District. After we move there, you can come and play," Poplar Fruit invited. Duan Shueching said with some joy. Poplar Fruit pointed to the furniture in the house and said, "I'll leave the table, sofa, and coffee table here to you. If you don't mind, I'll leave the bed here. Anyway, there's all the furniture there. I only need to bring my personal belongings there." "No," Duan Shueching sat on the sofa with her sun hat and said softly, "Then I don't have to buy it myself, hee." She usually didn't like to express her emotions. Now, she only smiled slightly. "That's fine. If you don't have any opinion, we'll go and find the landlord to sign a new contract. I've mentioned it to her before. The rent is still the same as before. It's 800 yuan a month. I still have the deposit, so I'll leave it to you. You can pay the landlord the rent monthly." "How can this be?" Duan Shueching said anxiously, "This is Brother Yang's money." Poplar Fruit waved his hand and said, "It doesn't matter. Your Brother Yang isn't short of money now. It's troublesome to get a few hundred yuan back. In the future, when you get your salary, you can treat Brother Yang to a meal." Duan Shueching hesitated for a moment before she accepted it. She felt a little sweet in her heart. Poplar Fruit took her to another building in the community to find the old landlady. The old lady was very nice. She quickly signed the new contract. After they came out, Poplar Fruit asked Duan Shueching, "I'm moving this weekend. When are you going to move over?" "I haven't decided yet. I want to move my things over early, but it's a little too much." Duan Shueching whispered. "How about this? After I move with Song Jiwen, I'll drive over and help you move your things over. If you want to stay with your roommates in the dormitory for a few more days, you can leave your bed and a few sets of clothes. It won't be troublesome to move them after the graduation ceremony." Poplar Fruit turned his head and said to Kiki while holding her, "Brother Yang, you're too nice." Duan Shueching said softly. She looked up at Poplar Fruit and lowered her head with a blush on her cheeks. Kiki struggled in Poplar Fruit's arms. Poplar Fruit and Duan Shueching walked side by side under the sunset. Duan Shueching was nearly 1.7 meters tall when she stood next to Poplar Fruit. There wasn't much of a difference. A few petals of flowers that had been exposed to the sun for a day fell from the tree and fell on her shoulder. They were rolled up by her soft hair and slid down her back. The sound of footsteps gradually faded away. There seemed to be a few wisps of flower fragrance in the air. Chapter 43. Oh, Poplar Fruit stood at the end of the bed, his head tilted back, and he slammed himself into the bed. The soft new mattress had a hole in it. He let out a long sigh and said to himself, "Comfortable. I'm so tired." Finally, they were done packing. Early in the morning, Song Ji-wen drove over to pick up Poplar Fruit. The two of them made 3 trips to move everything to their new home. Song Ji-wen only brought 1 suitcase, mainly because Poplar Fruit and Kiki had more things. Then, they went to Higashiyama University to help Duan Shueching move her luggage. Although Poplar Fruit only moved most of the luggage, it couldn't fit into a car. Poplar Fruit had heard that girls had a lot of clothes, but he didn't expect that even Duan Shueching, who usually looked pure and simple, would pack 4 suitcases of clothes. In order to not make an extra trip, 2 suitcases couldn't fit in. Poplar Fruit asked Song Ji-wen to call a taxi and follow behind. After settling the moving, Poplar Fruit invited their neighbor, Lu Gillen, and his family for lunch. He said goodbye to them and introduced his junior, Duan Shueching, to them. He also asked them to take care of the ignorant Duan Shueching. In the afternoon, Poplar Fruit dragged Song Ji-wen to the market to buy the things they needed for their new home, such as mattresses, clothes hangers, pots and pans, and cleaning supplies. Then, Poplar Fruit was busy putting all the things they bought and moved to their rightful places. Song Ji-wen, on the other hand, was very comfortable. He made the bed, and then everything was fine. Poplar Fruit was a bit of a clean freak. He had to clean and wipe the house from top to bottom. Only when he saw that the house was clean and bright did he feel relieved. After everything was done, even the iron-like Poplar Fruit felt a little tired. He threw himself on the bed and didn't want to move. Poplar Fruit was about to close his eyes and take a nap when Song Ji-wen's giggling voice came from the door of the master bedroom. "Look at your father, such an idiot." Poplar Fruit turned around and saw him leaning against the door frame with Kiki in his arms. He even taught his daughter how to laugh at him. What's more, this guy didn't even change into slippers when he came in. He didn't even take off his shoes. How could this be? How could he tolerate this? Poplar Fruit jumped up from the bed and snatched his daughter back from Song Ji-wen. He kicked him out and said, "Why didn't you change your shoes before coming in? Get out, get out. Do you have slippers for me to change into?" While dodging Poplar Fruit's attack, Song Ji-wen smiled and said, "Besides, I'm helping to take care of your daughter. How could I have the time to squat down and change my shoes?" "I don't have any shoes to change into." Poplar Fruit found a rag and threw it on the ground. He stepped on it and said, "Don't you know how to take off your shoes? Do you have to squat down to take off your shoes?" He held Kiki, lowered his head, and used his feet to control the rag to wipe the dirt on the ground. "Look here, you've dirted everything. I worked so hard to clean this afternoon, and you're going to ruin it." Song Ji-wen stood at the door and said with a giggle, "It's just a little bit. Just wipe it clean. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill." After wiping it clean, Poplar Fruit squatted down and picked up the rag with one hand and held Kiki with the other. But when Kiki saw her father's head, she thought it was funny and began to comb her father's hair with her little hands. "Kiki, don't move," Poplar Fruit quickly shouted. "Ouch, you're pulling my hair." "Hee hee." Chi-Chi clapped her hands and laughed happily. Yang Gua, on the other hand, was grimacing because of her pulling just now. With his forehead against Kiki's, Poplar Fruit deliberately stared at Kiki's beautiful big eyes and said in a low voice, "Yang Luochi, listen carefully to your father. If you continue to cause trouble, your father will bite off your nose." After saying that, he opened his mouth and ground his teeth. Kiki was not afraid at all. When Poplar Fruit wanted to move his head back, she leaned on him and giggled even louder. She seemed to think it was funny to be against her father. When Poplar Fruit turned his head and threw the dirty rag into the kitchen sink, she stretched out her little arms and tried to pull Poplar Fruit's head back. It was rare to find a game that Kiki liked so much, so Poplar Fruit also played with her. The father and daughter stood in the middle of the living room, forehead against forehead, laughing and talking. It was very warm. Song Ji-wen was waiting impatiently at the door. He shouted, "Old Gua, are you done?" "Still playing." Let's go pick up Kitten and have a meal together. She's about to get off work. Poplar Fruit was playing with Kiki. After a long time, he replied, "Okay, wait for me. I'll be done soon." Song Jiwen waited for nearly half an hour. He was about to go crazy when Poplar Fruit walked out of the door with Kiki in his arms. He was making milk powder for Kiki. Kitten was a kindergarten teacher who worked in Shoshan district. It took half an hour to drive there. Now that it was rush hour, the car was driving as slow as a snail. Song Jiwen muttered in the car that Poplar Fruit was slow. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so troublesome. Poplar Fruit ignored his complaints and asked with a smile, "Mosquito, isn't today the weekend? Why does Kitten have to work?" Some children's parents work on weekends, so they stay in the kindergarten on weekends. This Saturday, it's Kitten's turn to be on duty. Song Jiwen stared ahead intently and said, "It turns out to be like this." Poplar Fruit nodded. "She doesn't have to work tomorrow. I'll pick her up tonight," Song Jiwen said with a smile. Poplar Fruit glanced at him speechlessly. "Pick up your girlfriend to play? I guess it's more like you're done playing with me and I'll play with you," Poplar Fruit thought contemptuously in his heart. At this time, his cell phone suddenly rang. It was Lu Jingyi. "Hello, Jingyi." Poplar Fruit answered the phone and said, "Brother Yang." Lu Jingyi lowered her voice and shouted with some excitement. Poplar Fruit asked strangely, "What's the matter? What happened? Could it be that there was some progress on Han Tao's matter? The big boss came back today." The big boss in Lu Jingyi's words was the big boss. Something happened. The big boss should still be in charge of the overall situation in Yingjili during this time, but he suddenly came back. Poplar Fruit sat up straight and said, "Well, I'm listening. You go on." Several other bosses also came to the company and called Han Tao over. Lu Jingyi's voice trembled with excitement. "Don't be excited. First, look around to see if there's anyone around and tell me slowly." Poplar Fruit's gentle voice seemed to have some magic. Lu Jingyi's heavy breathing finally eased a little. "Well, there's no one around. Now that everyone is off work, I'm calling you outside." Lu Jingyi paused for a moment and then continued. It turned out that when it was almost noon today, the big boss came back to the company with his luggage. Several shareholders followed behind him and went straight to the conference room as soon as they came in. It was said that the atmosphere in the conference room was tense, and it was as tense as an ignited barrel of gunpowder. Then an hour later, the big boss came out with a dark face and called Han Tao, who was still in the business department. Han Tao walked into the conference room with a blank face and finally came out in tears. He went back to his seat in a daze and began to pack his things and leave. How could he not be depressed when he was driven out? Poplar Fruit laughed in his heart. It seemed that the big boss protected him because of his relationship with his wife. Otherwise, he would definitely be sent to the police station for such a business leak. But thinking about it, the big boss must have paid a lot of money. Poplar Fruit believed that after such an incident, the big boss would definitely not tolerate him. How could such a traitor, who even sold his own family, still stay by his side? It was already very kind of him not to put him in jail. For such an ending, Poplar Fruit was also very satisfied. There was no need to put Han Tao in jail. Cutting off his hope of staying in the city and indulging in debauchery would make him more desperate than killing him. There are rumors in the company that the big orders we lost some time ago were all done by him, Lu Jingyi said mysteriously to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit said to her seriously, "Don't gossip about this in the company. Now the higher-ups are in a bad mood. Be careful not to be implicated." "NN, I know," Lu Jingyi said on the other side of the phone. She hesitated and whispered, "Brother Yang, last time you said that you would help me, was it you who did it?" "What is it?" "Don't mention the past," Poplar Fruit warned her, and then said vaguely, "Isn't there a saying like this? If you don't seek death, you won't die. If he made a mistake, he can't blame anyone. Do you understand?" "NN, I understand. Let's keep a low profile." Lu Jingyi covered her mouth and laughed softly. Okay, so that's it? Wait, Brother Yang, you have helped me so much. I don't know how to repay you. Lu Jingyi said hurriedly. Haha, there is no need to talk about repayment. You just do your job well and strive to become a full-time employee as soon as possible. Then, Brother Yang will be relieved. Brother Yang said. This matter was really not about repayment. Originally, this was also related to poplar fruit. Poplar fruit wouldn't just stand by and watch. Wait until I make money. I will treat Brother Yang to a meal. Brother Yang, you can't say no at that time. Lu Jingyi said firmly. Okay, I will wait for your big meal. Haha. Poplar fruit laughed heartily. After putting down the phone, Song Jiwen, who had been holding back for a long time, could finally ask, Is there any progress on the matter that day? Poplar fruit nodded and smiled. Yes, it is a success. I finally got this villain back. Well done. Song Jiwen smiled and said, Old Gua, you are so powerful. You can even be a flying thief. Haha. Poplar fruit shook his head and said, Forget it. Let's not talk about this. It is not worth showing off. You know it. To be honest, if it wasn't to deal with Han Tao this time, Poplar fruit would not be willing to scheme against others. Poplar fruit was certainly not a pedantic person. He also understood that he should know how to be flexible. Now that his brain was so flexible, it was not impossible to scheme against a person. However, if he calculated everything and thought about how to scheme against others every day, one day, his mind would become dark. Then, what was the difference between him and Han Tao? Poplar fruit did not regret spending so much effort to scheme against Han Tao this time. After all, this was a mad dog. If he didn't guard against it, it wouldn't be good to be bitten by the dog. However, it was better to live a sunny life in the future. Poplar fruit looked at the setting sun outside the car window. He smiled and silently reminded himself to be a good example for Kiki. After picking up Kitten, they found a private restaurant and had a delicious meal. It was considered a housewarming party, although the house was rented. On the way, Poplar fruit stopped to buy a few pairs of slippers. He thought that Song Jiwen and Poplar fruit would visit him at his house after they returned. However, Poplar fruit found that he had underestimated the thickness of their skin. Back at the apartment, Song Jiwen pulled Kitten back to their house with a smirk on his face and slammed the door shut. Poplar fruit stood in the hallway, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He wiped his nose, took out the key, and went home alone with Kiki. Chapter 44. On the first day of moving into the new house, Poplar fruit was not as good as Kiki. A child who was less than a year old could drink and sleep well without any discomfort in a new environment. However, Poplar fruit was so excited that he could no longer sleep before dawn and got up early. It was not even 5 o'clock yet. If he went out for a run, he would probably be treated as a weirdo by the security guards. Leaving the master bedroom door ajar, Poplar fruit paced back and forth in the living room, which was much more spacious than the house he rented before. He thought about what he should do in such a beautiful room. Song Jiwen, who was diagonally across the room, was probably still sleeping on the bed with the kitten in his arms. Poplar fruit was actually a little envious in his heart. There was often a scene like this in literary movies. The morning sun passed through the glass window and slanted across the bed. The female protagonist opened her blurred eyes and looked at the male protagonist lying next to her at close range. Then they smiled sweetly at each other. Poplar fruit had always yearned for such a scene. But now he had a bedroom where he could see the morning sun and a large double bed. The only thing missing was a woman. Lu Yunran, who Poplar fruit had once fantasized about and was most likely to sleep in the same bed as him, was now unknown. Who else would be willing to take over his mess? Poplar fruit shook his head with a bitter smile. He suddenly realized that he was trapped by love again. He really could not stand loneliness. If he had so much time to let his imagination run wild, he might as well learn more things. Poplar fruit made a summary of what he had learned in the past. Some time ago, he had been learning French again. After half a month of rote memorization, he had already memorized most of the basic knowledge such as grammar and vocabulary. It must be known that during this period of time, Yang Guo had purchased more than 20 French books. In the study room, the second bedroom, there was an entire layer of books on the bookshelf. After reading so many books, Poplar Fruit could now be considered to have achieved a small success in French. Of course, there was still a long way to go before he could really achieve something and be able to use English as freely as he was now. This was something that had to be honed through practice. Currently, Poplar Fruit had found a friend from France on the internet. Every night, he would video chat with him online and talk about French for an hour. Then, Poplar Fruit would read some French newspapers on the internet to practice his French translation skills. But now that most of his reading time was free, what could he do with this time? Study other subjects? Finance or computing? Poplar Fruit pondered. However, he still gave up on this idea. Rather than spreading the net everywhere, it was better to focus on one city. Asking himself honestly, Poplar Fruit realized that he was actually an artistic youth who liked to ponder over words. The Chinese language was broad and profound, and foreign languages were not inferior either. They each had their own advantages. After learning English, Poplar Fruit felt as if he had seen a completely different world. And after learning French, he felt as if he had become acquainted with a nation whose romantic factor was condensed in their bones. Language was not just words or letters, it was also the inheritance of a culture and the soul of a nation. Learning a language, Poplar Fruit felt as if he was traveling around the world, as if he was communicating with the wise people of other nations, as if he was breathing at the same frequency as the unfamiliar land. This kind of happiness was something that other subjects could not give him. Continue learning. Poplar Fruit firmly told himself that the next language he would choose was German. Like English, German belonged to the Germanic branch of the Indo-European language family. French was different. French belonged to the Romance branch of the Indo-European language family. Its words were similar to English, both had 26 words, but German had 4 special letters. This way, Poplar Fruit could learn German from scratch, and it would not be too difficult to get started. Of course, German had its own pronunciation rules and grammar rules, and it was not as easy to learn as French. However, these were the same. Poplar Fruit planned to buy books back and slowly memorize them. Looking up at the time, it was time to train. Poplar Fruit changed into a pair of shorts and sneakers, closed the door and walked downstairs. The lawn downstairs was sprinkled with dewdrops, and under the morning sun, it looked especially sparkling and translucent, as if it was draped in a graceful beaded gauze. However, this beauty was like an unreliable first love, unable to withstand the heat of the sun. Although it was midsummer, the early morning in the neighborhood was still a little chilly. A few aunties who had woken up early to buy groceries shivered as soon as they came out, and quickly wrapped their coats tightly around themselves. If they met someone they knew, they would exchange greetings, but they did not stop walking, afraid that the groceries would be sold out by the time they got there. Although it was cold, Poplar Fruit was not afraid. His body's metabolism was much more vigorous. Poplar Fruit began to jog along the small path in the neighborhood. If someone paid attention, they would notice that although Poplar Fruit's pace was no different from a normal person's, his breathing was very short, and each time he breathed, it was only 1/3 of a normal person's air volume. Poplar Fruit not only breathed less, but his breathing rate was also very low. On average, he only breathed once every 3 steps. This was the exercise method he had recently discovered: anaerobic jogging. That was because his physical fitness was too good. Normally, he could run for half an hour without breaking a sweat. In order to achieve enough exercise in a short period of time, Poplar Fruit created a high-altitude environment for himself. If he did not inhale enough oxygen, part of his body's metabolism would become anaerobic. Generally, under very intense exercise, a person's normal aerobic metabolism would not be able to provide the body with enough energy for a short period of time, resulting in anaerobic metabolism. At this time, the body's carbohydrates would be broken down into acidic substances such as lactic acid and pyruvic acid. Research had proven that through anaerobic training, athletes could greatly improve muscle endurance and body speed. This was just one aspect. It could also improve bone density and increase the ratio of muscle to fat. Although the ratio of muscle to fat was generally a test for NBA basketball players, for ordinary people, it was another way of saying that one was fat and thin. Anaerobic exercise could be said to be a great tool for losing weight. However, anaerobic exercise was not as simple as it seemed. Unscientific anaerobic exercise would cause acidic substances such as lactic acid to be deposited in the blood. In light cases, it would only cause muscle soreness and arrhythmia. In serious cases, it would cause acidosis and burden on the liver and kidney. So, everyone, don't blindly practice according to Poplar Fruit's method. The consequences are very serious. Anaerobic exercise could not be done for a long time. Poplar Fruit was the same. He only maintained anaerobic long-distance jogging for 15 minutes before returning to normal jogging. Then, he used 15 minutes of breathing to deal with the lactic acid and other harmful substances in his body. While running around the neighborhood, Yang took the opportunity to get a better understanding of the situation in the neighborhood. The real estate agent was not exaggerating. The neighborhood did have 2 open-air basketball courts, 2 badminton courts, and a tennis court. Among them, Poplar Fruit found that the basketball court used tempered glass backboards, which were much better than the school's wooden backboards. The fitness club was a very large cylindrical building. From the outside introduction, it was not an exaggeration to call it the Palace of Culture and Entertainment. Not only did it have a swimming pool, a table tennis room, a gym, a small library, a calligraphy room, an activity center, and so on. The rent of a few thousand yuan was well spent. Poplar Fruit nodded secretly. Poplar Fruit was still very interested in basketball and swimming. After leaving school, he had not touched a ball for a year. First, there was no time. Second, there was no place. Poplar Fruit had not touched a ball. Seeing a place to play basketball again, Poplar Fruit felt his blood boil. After finding a remote grassy area to practice, Poplar Fruit asked a middle-aged woman for directions. He went to the market and bought breakfast and some vegetables for 3 people. He bought enough for a day. Anyway, there was a refrigerator at home, so the food would not spoil. This was much better than the rental house. After he came back, he knocked on Song Jiwen's door. No one answered. Poplar Fruit could only go back to his own house, take a shower, change his clothes, and eat breakfast. When the sun was high in the sky, Song Jiwen and Xiao Mao opened the door and came in while rubbing their eyes. As soon as they entered the door, they shouted, "Is there anything to eat? I'm starving." Poplar Fruit sat in front of the computer and did his translation work. He looked at the ex-man and ex-woman speechlessly and pointed at the dining table. However, the porridge and buns on the dining table were cold. Song Jiwen and Xiao Mao did not mind. The 2 of them casually ate a little. "Lao Gua, Xiao Mao and I are going to buy a TV. Do you want to come with us?" Song Jiwen took a big bite of a bun and said vaguely. Poplar Fruit's voice came from the study, "No, you guys go by yourselves. I don't need a TV anyway." There was an urgent document at hand, so Poplar Fruit did not plan to be a third wheel for them. At noon, Poplar Fruit cooked a pot of porridge. He took out a bag of dried Malaysian fish that Lu Suchin gave him when they moved out from the fridge. He fried it in oil until both sides were golden and shiny. Then he cooked some salted cabbage. Lunch was ready. As if they smelled the aroma of the food, Song Jiwen and Xiao Mao came back from shopping. There would be workers to install the wall-style TV in the afternoon. They paid the deposit and came back. Everyone slurped the porridge, ate the fried fish, and salted cabbage. Although there were only 2 dishes, they were very simple. They could eat these at noon on a hot day. The porridge was light and delicious, and the side dishes were salty, fresh, and fragrant. It was simply the envy of the gods. During lunch, Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen talked about the basketball court they saw this morning. Song Jiwen was suddenly interested. "Lao Gua, we really chose the right place," he said excitedly. "Let's go play in the afternoon." "I want to go watch." Xiao Mao raised her hands high. "Okay." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "We'll go in the afternoon. Xiao Mao, when we're playing basketball, please help me take care of Kiki." Xiao Mao's face was red with excitement. She nodded and said, "No problem, I love taking care of babies. This afternoon, the elite class double killers will reappear." Song Jiwen stepped on the stool, put his hands on his waist, and shouted to the sky. Xiao Mao held her hands in her heart and looked at her man with stars in her eyes. She wanted to go up and hug him right now. Poplar Fruit looked at these two people speechlessly. He only thought that these two people were really weird, but in terms of personality, they were really a perfect match. After Poplar Fruit got up in the afternoon, other than bathing and feeding Kiki, he continued to do his translation work. There were only a little more than 1,000 words left, and he wanted to finish it before he went to play basketball. Song Jiwen was not idle. After the worker uncle came to install the TV, he excitedly took Xiao Mao to the sports store in a taxi and bought new shoes and a basketball. Then he ran back to Poplar Fruit's house and played the basketball in his hand to disturb Poplar Fruit, who was concentrating on translating the last few paragraphs. Poplar Fruit could not bear it anymore. He pushed him out and slammed the door of the study. The world was finally quiet. Chapter 45. It was different from the deserted morning. In the afternoon, the sports fields in the neighborhood were packed with people. It seemed that the neighbors' passion for sports was as hot as fire. One had to know that the neighborhood's entrance was very strict. It was almost impossible for non-Jinli residents to sneak in. Bang bang. Squeak squeak. These two sounds were endless on the court. The former was the sound of a basketball bouncing quickly on the ground, while the latter was the sound of sneakers rubbing against the ground. The two sounds intertwined and suppressed the cheers on the court. Standing in front of the basketball court, Song Jiwen, wearing the yellow jersey number 24, and Poplar Fruit, wearing the white jersey number 3, were helpless. There were 2 basketball courts and 4 halves. One of them had a group of children playing basketball, while the other 3 were occupied by students and adult uncles. There were no more courts. What should they do? Bro! A shout came from the court. A 16 or 17-year-old boy squeezed out of the crowd. When he got closer and saw Poplar Fruit's appearance, he quickly changed his words and said, "Two big brothers, are you guys in a team?" Like Song Jiwen, he was also a fan of the game. Both of them were wearing the number 24 jersey, so the distance between them was shortened a lot. "Can I join a team over there?" Song Jiwen asked. Number 24 hurriedly replied, "Yes, they only have 3 teams." Poplar Fruit looked around. They were all uncles. This tall and skinny teenager was really like a newborn calf that was not afraid of tigers. Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen looked at each other. Their eyes were burning with the flames of war. While waiting for the rotation, Poplar Fruit learned that number 24 was called Ah Feng. He was only in his 2nd year of high school and was a basketball player. Looking at the competition between the uncles on the field, Yang Guo was a little surprised. Although the uncles looked to be in their 30s or 40s, they played the ball methodically. They played all kinds of passes, cuts, blocks, and all kinds of combinations were very smooth. It was no wonder that no one dared to form a team to challenge them even though they had fewer people. Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen practiced passing and dribbling on the sidelines. Not long after, it was their turn. The 3 uncles wiped their sweat and smiled as they walked down the field. They drank water in big gulps and waved at Poplar Fruit and the others. "Come on. Let's get rid of those old ruffians." The 3 uncles also took the opportunity to drink a few mouthfuls of water. When they heard this, they all laughed out loud. "Old Wang, you guys can't do it. If you lose, you look for adults." "Oh no, it's children. Haha." A burly uncle clapped his hands and said to Poplar Fruit and the others with a smile, "Kids, come and beat us. Damn, we've won so many matches in a row. I'm exhausted." After saying that, they all laughed. Although the uncles didn't have any ill intentions, their words showed that they looked down on Poplar Fruit's team. They seemed to think that they could beat them up as they wished. Poplar Fruit felt that it was a little harsh. Ah Feng looked at the uncle's arms that were thicker than his thighs. His face was a little pale, but his eyes were stubborn. Poplar Fruit saw it and nodded slightly in his heart. Next to him, Kitten held on to the baby stroller. Kiki was sleeping soundly inside. She looked at them nervously. When the ball was kicked off, Ah Feng rushed to the center circle and passed the ball to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit passed the ball back to him and then came to the 3-second zone, ready to grab the rebound. Song Jiwen was stunned for a moment, then he understood Poplar Fruit's intention. He wanted to see Ah Feng's strength first. However, Song Jiwen had never seen Poplar Fruit play inside the 3-point line. He could only secretly pray that Poplar Fruit, who was now more than 1.8 meters tall, could grab the rebound. Poplar Fruit walked in, and the big uncle immediately stuck to him. His arms were sweaty and slippery. Poplar Fruit didn't hesitate to hit him under the backboard, but he didn't use his full strength. He just acted like the two of them were evenly matched. Ah Feng didn't seem to expect Poplar Fruit to throw the ball back at the beginning of the game. He hesitated when he received the ball. When he saw that Song Jiwen had also pulled away, it was clear that he wanted him to play alone. Poplar Fruit made a gesture to him inside the 3-point line, asking him to play boldly. Poplar Fruit was inside the 3-point line. Ah Feng started to dribble. He was probably too nervous and exposed a few flaws. The uncle guarding him immediately pressed him. For a moment, he was in danger and almost lost the ball. He reflexively dribbled twice between his legs and behind his back before he finally stabilized. Poplar Fruit's eyes lit up. This kid's basic skills were good. However, the weight difference was there. Ah Feng was finally forced into a corner. Song Jiwen was too late to help, and the pass was snatched by the uncle guarding Song Jiwen midway. The uncle didn't even enter the 3-point line before he grabbed the shot. The basketball steadily went into the hoop. Good shot, Brother Dao. Yong was defender, the big and burly uncle, shouted. Song Jiwen waved his arm in annoyance and said, "It's mine." Poplar Fruit waved his hand, indicating that it didn't matter. Kitten shouted from the sidelines, Brother Wen, you can do it. Brother Wen, you can do it." She felt a little shy to call him husband in public. The winner continued to serve. The one holding the ball was actually the big uncle. It seemed that this time he was going to start his own offense. He chuckled, lowered his body, and sped up toward the inner line. Poplar Fruit blocked in front of him and was about to meet his impact. Ah Feng came in from the outside and wanted to help defend. Poplar Fruit was shocked and wanted to shout, "Don't come over!" But it was too late. The tall and sturdy uncle threw the ball outside with a proud face. The uncle who was defending Ah Feng received the ball and raised his arm, wanting to throw it. Song Jiwen arrived this time. He shouted, "Don't even think about it." Unfortunately, the uncle didn't really intend to shoot. He just pointed slightly, and Song Jiwen jumped over. Then he passed the ball to the uncle called Brother Dao. Uncle Dao received the ball, calmly adjusted his posture, jumped up and gently pushed the ball out with his right hand. It went in again. "Ah Ban, good pass." Uncle Dao smiled at the uncle who passed the ball to him. Yong Guo frowned. He knew that this would be the result. Just now, the uncles had already played the ball several times. Ah Feng shouldn't have missed anyone. Judging from the current situation, Uncle Ban was their main shooter. He was very accurate outside shooting. He didn't know how good the others were. When the ball started again, Poplar Fruit clapped and shouted, "Guard your own man." Uncle Dao passed the ball to Uncle Ban. Uncle Dao dribbled twice. Ah Feng squatted and steadily guarded. He had to hang the ball inside the 3-point line. After Uncle Ban threw the ball out, he stood in place and smiled, "Ah Jean, single." The one who caught the ball was the big uncle. Poplar Fruit was in a defensive posture and shouted, "No need to help defend." He was worried that he would miss someone again. Uncle Jean smiled and turned sideways. With Poplar Fruit on his shoulder, he smiled and said, "Little brother, you really don't want to help defend? You have to hold on." Before his voice died away, a strong force came from his shoulder. It was like waves, wave after wave, hitting Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit's hands were on his shoulders. His waist was in a horse stance. His legs were like the roots of an old tree. Uncle Gene hit him several times, but he couldn't push Poplar Fruit away. Uncle Gene was surprised. He had to turn around and shoot a jump shot. Poplar Fruit reacted quickly. He jumped high and hit the ball in the air. Lao Gua, beautiful! Song Jiwen shouted excitedly. Kitten below the stage also clapped her hands excitedly. Uncle Ban picked up the ball from outside the court. He smiled and followed Uncle Gene and said, "Ah, Gene, why are you so weak?" Uncle Gene said embarrassedly, "Damn, how did I know this little brother was so strong? And jumped so high?" Uncle Ban passed the ball to Uncle Dao. Uncle Dao planned to break through Song Jiwen, who had made 2 shots. Song Jiwen was annoyed. "I didn't pay attention and let you make 2 shots. Do you really think I'm a pushover?" He opened his arms and didn't give Uncle Dao any room to break through. Uncle Dao had no choice but to shoot a jump shot. However, Song Jiwen also reacted. Although he didn't block the ball, he successfully interfered with Uncle Dao. The ball hit the backboard and bounced out. Poplar Fruit blocked the position and jumped to receive the ball. Poplar Fruit passed the ball to Song Jiwen. Song Jiwen dribbled the ball out of the 3-point line. He dribbled the ball twice in a row and shook off Uncle Ban. He rushed inside the 3-point line and made a 3-step layup. He held the ball in his left hand and was about to throw it to the backboard. Got it! Song Jiwen was happy. As long as he threw the ball out, he could score. But it wasn't that easy. Uncle Gene inside the 3-point line was not to be trifled with. He roared, jumped high, and hit the ball out of the 3-point line with his fat palm. Song Jiwen landed on the ground and looked at Uncle Gene, who was like a god. Poplar Fruit shouted, "Defense!" Uncle Dao, who had received the ball outside the 3-point line, was now in a state of no defense. Poplar Fruit had to jump out himself. The moment he jumped out, he knew the ball was gone. Although he did rush to prevent Uncle Dao from shooting from an open spot, Uncle Dao passed the ball to Uncle Gene. Song Jiwen couldn't defend. Uncle Gene just squeezed the ball slightly and easily made the shot. After being swept out of the game with a score of 3-0, Ah Feng and Song Jiwen walked off the court helplessly with their heads down. Poplar Fruit walked to them with a smile and said, "What's wrong? Have you lost your confidence?" Song Jiwen shook his head and said with a smile, "How can that be? It's just that these 3 uncles are really strong. It's a little difficult to play." Ah Feng did not speak. He nodded in agreement. Poplar Fruit grinned and said, "Don't worry. In fact, I have a rough understanding of their strength." Song Jiwen and Ah Feng listened carefully. He analyzed, "Mosquito, the Uncle Dao you are guarding is very accurate in shooting from the open position, but he is not good at layups. If you stay close to him, it will be difficult for him to make a shot. But you have to be careful not to miss anyone. Once you give him space, we are likely to lose the ball. So in the next game, Mosquito, you have to keep a close eye on him. You don't have to worry about the other's defense." Song Jiwen nodded and said, "Okay. No problem." Next is Uncle Ben, who is guarding Ah Feng. I saw his previous shots. He is better at a 45-degree inside jumper and a layup from the right baseline. Ah Feng nodded repeatedly. Poplar Fruit continued, "Your main task is to prevent him from shooting comfortably, and then interfere with his breakthrough. But it doesn't matter if you can't prevent it. If he breaks through to the basket, there is still me. You don't have to worry about Uncle Ben. He can't beat me. You don't have to come over to help me defend. Otherwise, you will definitely miss someone like just now." After a pause, Poplar Fruit continued to talk about the offensive tactics. "When it is our turn to attack, pass the ball to me. I will control it. Yes, Lao Gua, you should be a point guard. Don't always pass the ball to us." Song Jiwen laughed. Poplar Fruit used to play the point guard position. Song Jiwen knew how amazing Poplar Fruit's talent in this position was. Just now, I mainly wanted to see if Ah Feng could play alone, Poplar Fruit explained. But now it seems that the other side is too aggressive. Ah Feng, I will pass the ball to you in the future. If you are open, shoot. If not, pass. Try to reduce the ball control. Understood. Ah Feng nodded and said. Chapter 46. If it's our turn to attack, try your best to run. As long as there's space, the ball will definitely be passed to you. Shoot boldly and don't worry about rebounds, Poplar Fruit encouraged them. Ah Feng's expression began to look a little excited. He said confidently, "No problem. Give me a chance. I'll definitely score. But there's one thing you must pay attention to," Poplar Fruit said seriously. Just like the ball that Mosquito just threw, if you don't defend in time, they'll immediately find an opening to counterattack. So as long as you shoot the ball, don't worry about the result. Hurry up and defend the person you're guarding. Don't miss anyone. Song Jiwen also nodded seriously. Poplar Fruit smiled. That's fine. In the next game, we'll beat them fiercely and wash away our shame. He put his right hand in the middle of the three people. Song Jiwen and Ah Feng also put their hands over, then pressed down together and shouted in unison, "Beat them." The four teams took turns to play. For a while, it was not Poplar Fruit's turn. Ah Feng picked up a ball and started to dribble on the sidelines. Song Jiwen ran to Kitten and whispered sweet nothings to each other. Poplar Fruit looked at Kiki. She was still sleeping. He didn't need to worry about her. He focused on watching the ball and continued to observe the strength of the opponent. Shwa! Uncle Dao finished the opponent with a long shot. Poplar Fruit and the others came on to replace the three men who had lost again. Now, Uncle Dao and the other two had won 6 games in a row. Their momentum was like a rainbow. For a moment, it looked like no one could stop them. Ah Feng passed the ball to Poplar Fruit in the center circle, then jogged around the outside. Song Jiwen also began to move around the baseline, looking for an opening. Poplar Fruit planned to take the ball himself. He crossed his legs and dribbled. It was just a fake move to deceive Uncle Dao, then he rushed straight into the inside line. Uncle Jean roared and rushed forward. Although Poplar Fruit was not afraid of fighting him head-on, Poplar Fruit did not intend to fight him head-on. The moment Uncle Jean came close, Yangwa clamped the basketball with her right wrist and used her left foot as the pivot to easily turn around and go around him. Before Uncle Jean could react, Poplar Fruit was already behind him. Then, Poplar Fruit jumped into the air and threw the ball into the net with his left hand. 1-0. Well done. Even the uncle on the opposite side clapped his hands and praised. Indeed, Poplar Fruit's effortless layup of 2 people in a row was very elegant, and there was no need to say anything about it. The audience below the court also applauded. When the ball restarted, Poplar Fruit held the ball and stood outside the 3-point line. He dribbled and dribbled, looking like he was full of flaws. But Uncle Dao, who was on the defense, did not dare to go forward to steal. He also knew that Poplar Fruit's dribbling was actually very good. If he went forward, he would fall into his trap. This time, he focused and observed carefully. Poplar Fruit smiled slightly. He began to dribble quickly, under his crotch, behind him, left, right, and right. His movements changed in a dazzling way. Uncle Dao stared at the ball, thinking that Poplar Fruit was just fooling him. But then, Poplar Fruit suddenly made a breakthrough to the left. Even though he was experienced, Uncle Dao was still shaken. He took a step with his right foot, and his body's center of gravity shifted a lot to the right. He suddenly realized and shouted in his heart, "Not good." Poplar Fruit immediately pulled back his left hand, passed the ball to his right hand, and quickly passed from the right side. Again. Uncle Jean opened his arms and enveloped Poplar Fruit's direction in his arms. He knew that his movement speed was slow and could not guard against Poplar Fruit. But he was stalling for time, because Uncle Dao also put down a Feng and rushed to the inside line to defend. It seemed that the two of them were about to surround Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit grinned, leaned over, and jumped up against Uncle Jin's body. Uncle Jin and Uncle Dao also jumped up. Their palms formed a big screen in the air, trying to seal Poplar Fruit. But Poplar Fruit did not want to shoot by himself. He jumped high, and his palms suddenly turned over in the air. Instead, the basketball was quickly thrown to the outside line. The few people who jumped in the air looked in the direction of the basketball before they landed. A person happened to appear on the trajectory of the basketball. Ah Feng. He steadily received the ball, then aimed at the basket. He jumped up and shook his wrist. The basketball drew a beautiful arc and hit the inside of the basket. Poplar Fruit smiled and shouted, "Good shot." Ah Feng also excitedly shouted to Poplar Fruit, "Good pass." The ball was served again. Poplar Fruit received the ball, and Uncle Dao looked at him nervously. Poplar Fruit had broken through him twice. Uncle Jin also stood slightly forward. He could not let Poplar Fruit break through or score easily again. They all understood that the biggest threat in this team was Poplar Fruit. Yang Guo looked at the situation on the field and his heart skipped a beat. He deliberately made a few exaggerated dribbling movements, as if he was going to break through again, and focus the attention of the opponents on the field on him. But Poplar Fruit did not break through. He suddenly waved his right arm and passed the ball to Song Jiwen at the baseline. Uncle Jin stood in front, and Song Jiwen was empty. Song Jiwen jumped up and hooked the ball when he received the ball. It was too late for Uncle Jin to retreat. He could only watch Song Jiwen throw the ball to the backboard with his right hand. But the ball did not go in. Maybe Song Jiwen was too nervous, but he used too much strength. The ball bounced off the backboard and then bounced twice in the circle, but it rolled out. Uncle Jin jumped up and took the backboard smoothly. "Pay attention to defense." Poplar Fruit's shout woke up Song Jiwen, who was still regretting. At this time, Uncle Jin had already thrown the ball to Uncle Dao, but because Uncle Dao had not reached the three-point line, he could not shoot immediately. Song Jiwen hurriedly ran to Uncle Ban's side to prevent their quick counterattack from happening. Uncle Dao saw that there was no chance, so he passed the ball to Uncle Dao. Feng followed Poplar Fruit's previous instructions and steadily defended Uncle Dao, not giving him space to break through and shoot. Uncle Dao kept dribbling, looking for opportunities, but in the end, he could not find a flaw in Feng's defense. Poplar Fruit stood under the basket and praised Feng in his heart. Feng was really talented in basketball. His basic skills were solid, and his shooting was also very accurate. It was just that he was a little weak in physical confrontation. Otherwise, the three uncles on the court would not be enough for him to choose from. Uncle Dao finally chose to hit Feng. Feng gritted his teeth and held on, but he was defeated. Poplar Fruit saw this and shouted, "Feng, be careful of his step-back jump shot." As soon as his voice fell, Uncle Dao suddenly released his strength, took a step back, and then quickly jumped up to shoot. Although Feng was opened up by Uncle Dao, he also jumped up in time. With his height and long arms, the tip of his finger still brushed the spinning basketball in the air. The basketball floated up and hit the basket. Poplar Fruit jumped up and caught it in his hands. Uncle Dao sighed regretfully. Then, he was experienced and no longer stood there blankly. Instead, he went to meet Poplar Fruit, who was out of the three-point line. Poplar Fruit dashed left and right. With 2 consecutive feints, he shook him off. Then, he circled to the left and made a jump shot. Uncle Dao was shocked and quickly came up to defend himself. With a smile, Poplar Fruit swung his arm and passed the basketball to Song Jiwen, who ran to the empty space at a 45-degree angle. He shouted, "Shoot." If he did not score the first time, he would try again. Poplar Fruit firmly believed that his old partner would not let him down. Holding the ball with both hands, Song Jiwen took a deep breath. He was really anxious just now. Only he did not score a goal. In his eagerness to make a contribution, he used too much strength. This time, he would not make a mistake. He raised his arm. His eyes were only on the basket. He flicked his wrist. The basketball drew an arc in the air. Everyone in the audience was watching the ball. For a moment, it was silent. Shwa. The basketball made a circle of white waves in the basket. Yeah. Ah Feng jumped up high and waved his arm in the air. Song Jiwen's right hand was still raised. His face was full of smiles. Poplar Fruit laughed and patted him on the shoulder. The uncles stood there in disbelief. Was the match over just like that? The young guys who were defeated by them 3-0 just now actually came back with a 3-0 in this game? The uncles who had been abused by the three uncles were celebrating. They threw towels in the air, cheered, and high-fived. Kitten stood in front of the baby cart excitedly. Her face was red as she shouted, "Brother Wan, you are so handsome." Song Jiwen happily ran over to give her a hug. When the three uncles came off the court, they gave Poplar Fruit a thumbs up and said, "Young guys, you played very well. The younger generation will surpass us in time." Haha. They played the game openly. There was no situation where they could not afford to lose. Poplar Fruit also gave them a thumbs up and said, "Uncles, you are also very strong. This time we were lucky to win. Let's have a serious competition later." The strength of the next two teams of uncles was not very strong, but it was just enough for Poplar Fruit to hone the lineup. Poplar Fruit constantly supported from the high position. He passed the ball to Ah Feng and Song Jiwen, and then he grabbed the rebound himself. This made Ah Feng and Song Jiwen confident. 3-0, 3-1. Poplar Fruit and the others defeated two teams in a row. Finally, they met Uncle Dao, Uncle Ban, and Uncle Jean again. As soon as the game started, Uncle Dao quickly used Uncle Jin's block to get rid of Song Jiwen. He immediately caught the ball and shot a long shot. After 2 rounds of observation, the uncles found a breakthrough. Uncle Jean came out to block, and Poplar Fruit did not dare to defend. Because if Poplar Fruit defended, it would immediately give Uncle Jean a chance to hit Song Jiwen. Poplar Fruit was also in a dilemma. He hesitated and gave Uncle Dao a chance to shoot. With a smile, Poplar Fruit thought, "Want to beat us in this way? It's not that easy." When the game started again, although Uncle Dao tried to dribble the ball and break through, in the end, their tactics were the same. Uncle Jean blocked the ball. Although Song Jiwen paid attention, Uncle Jin's waist was too thick for him to go around. Uncle Dao received the ball in the space behind Uncle Jean and made a shooting motion. "I won't let you shoot so easily," Poplar Fruit shouted and pounced. Uncle Dao calmly passed the ball to Uncle Jean. Uncle Jean began to block Song Jiwen and rushed to the inside. However, Poplar Fruit had already guessed that they were going to play like this. When he pounced, he held back a little. When Uncle Dao passed the ball, he turned around and chased. Although Song Jiwen could not block Uncle Jin's charge, he still interfered and bought some time for Poplar Fruit. Just as Uncle Jean jumped up and was about to push the ball to the basket with a flick of his wrist, Uncle Dao shouted from behind, "Careful!" Uncle Jin's heart shuddered. Before he could react, a yellow palm appeared in front of his ball. With just a light push, the ball's flying direction changed. It bounced to the ground on the right side of the field and was snatched by Ah Feng. In front of Poplar Fruit, who was fast and good at jumping, this kind of defense was nothing. Chapter 47. Ah Feng dribbled the ball out of the three-point line and passed it to Poplar Fruit. Now that the core of their team was Poplar Fruit, Ah Feng confidently passed the ball to Poplar Fruit and let him launch the attack. Joint defense. Uncle Jean roared. Immediately, their positions changed. It was like an inverted triangle. Uncle Ban stood on the left, Uncle Dao on the right, and Uncle Jean stood at the top of the 3-second arc. The triangle shrank relatively small. It seemed like they were going to shoot 3-pointers and not break through. Poplar Fruit narrowed his eyes. He tried to attack from Uncle Dao's direction. Uncle Dao immediately stood slightly to the right, and Uncle Ban attacked Poplar Fruit from both sides. When they attacked from both sides, Poplar Fruit passed the ball. But Uncle Ban reacted quickly. Ah Feng had just received the ball, and he had already returned to his defensive position, not allowing him to easily shoot a two-pointer at a 45-degree angle. Ah Feng raised the ball twice to test the waters, but he couldn't trick Uncle Ban into jumping up. In desperation, he had to pass the ball to Song Jiwen, who had already cut into the lane. Song Jiwen received the ball. Before he could turn around, Uncle Jean had already closed in. Under the pressure, Song Jiwen was defeated and dribbled the ball to walk outside. Uncle Jean didn't chase after him. No matter how Poplar Fruit and the others changed, the three of them maintained their triangular position. This triangle wasn't rigid. Each of them had their own defensive area. They would assist Poplar Fruit in this area, and then ensure that they wouldn't give Poplar Fruit's other teammates the opportunity to attack. Song Jiwen passed the ball to Ah Feng, and Ah Feng passed it back to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit stood outside and dribbled the ball slowly, thinking of countermeasures. Fortunately, in these amateur games, there was no such thing as a 24-second violation. Otherwise, the ball would have changed hands long ago. Poplar Fruit passed the ball to Feng and let him pull out for a three-pointer. Uncle and the others did not completely give up on defending the three-point shot. Ah Feng stood at the three-point line and took a deep breath. He aimed at the basket. It was obvious that he wanted to shoot a three-point shot. Uncle Dao rushed up the moment he took off. When he was 1 meter away from Ah Feng, he didn't want to block the shot. Instead, he wanted to block Ah Feng's view and interfere with his shot. Ah Feng was not the real Kobe. He could not be indifferent to the disturbance in his line of sight. Sure enough, the ball missed its mark and bounced off the backboard. Poplar Fruit originally wanted to grab the rebound, but Uncle Jean blocked Poplar Fruit's position and blocked Poplar Fruit for a second, so the rebound was snatched by Uncle Jean. Song Jiwen hurriedly went over to defend. Uncle Dao did not hesitate. He brought him to the three-point line and hung him over to Uncle Jean. Poplar Fruit was ready to defend, but Uncle Jean did not want to attack. He also knew that he was not Poplar Fruit's opponent. Uncle Jean stood inside the three-point line, holding the ball and turning his body. He leaned his back against Poplar Fruit and was ready to hit him. But his wrist shook, and the ball passed over Ah Feng's head to Uncle Ban's hand. After all, Ah Feng was still a child. His reaction was slow, and he was passed by Uncle Ban. Here he comes. Poplar Fruit was shocked. Sure enough, when he was about to go around to defend, Uncle Jean blocked in front of him like a mountain. Block. Poplar Fruit only had these two words left in his mind. Uncle Dao slipped past the baseline and rushed to the bottom of the basket. Poplar Fruit roared, "Don't even think about it." He got out of Uncle Jin's arms, jumped high, and hit him with his palm. But Uncle Ban put away the basketball, jumped to the other side of the basket, and then turned his waist and abdomen in the air, and shook his right wrist back. Hook. Poplar Fruit jumped earlier than Uncle Ban, but he jumped very high. After his palm hit nothing, he straightened his waist in the air. His body stagnated in the air for a moment. With this stagnation, he completed the turn, from the right side of the basket to the left side, and his left palm hit the basket hard. What a pity! After all, it was a hook. The basketball drew a high parabola and plunged headfirst into the basket. Poplar Fruit's palm slipped under the basketball, slapped the backboard hard, and jumped to the ground in disappointment. He did not know that he had just scared Uncle Ban. He had already tricked Poplar Fruit and almost blocked the shot. And if he had really blocked it, it would have been a nail-biter. Everyone on the court and off the court stood dumbfounded. They should have been cheering for Uncle Jean and Uncle Ban's wonderful cooperation, but no one said anything. They were all shocked by Poplar Fruit. What kind of monster was he? When he jumped, his eyes were level with the basket. That was not the point. The point was that he could still block the shot from one side of the basket to the other, and he stayed in the air for at least a second. And when he fell, his palm hit the backboard, and the position he hit was more than a palm higher than the basket. Not to mention the amateur court, even in the top domestic basketball games, there were not many people who could reach such a level of levitation. And Poplar Fruit was not even 185 meters tall, and he could jump so high. Was he born in the year of the rabbit? Everyone was so shocked that they were speechless. However, the perpetrator had a look of regret on his face as he lamented the fact that he had not been able to defend against the ball. Now that the ball had gone in, the uncles had a 2-0 lead. Poplar Fruit and the others were in danger. At first, there was only the sound of Little Kitten cheering, who did not understand. The others slowly recovered from the shock after a long time, and clapped their hands sporadically. "It's okay, we will return it. Guard this ball well." Poplar Fruit shouted. Ah Feng and Song Jiwen were fully alert. They half-squatted, stretched out their hands, and stared at their opponents. The uncles were ready to play the pass and block again, but this time Poplar Fruit was prepared. When Uncle Ban hung the ball in, Poplar Fruit suddenly moved, circled in front of Uncle Jean, and jumped high to intercept the pass. There was an immediate change in the offensive and defensive roles. Poplar Fruit dribbled the ball out of the three-point line, and waved his hand to signal Ah Feng and Song Jiwen to pull to the end line, as if it was a one-on-one. The uncles were unmoved, and continued to maintain the inverted triangle defensive formation. Uncle Dao's face was serious, and he shouted, "Be careful, guard well." Poplar Fruit was indeed going to do it himself, to break the deadlock of no goals. Ever since he practiced internal martial arts, the biggest change in Poplar Fruit's body was not the change in height or appearance, but the change in his physical fitness. His strength had increased, his jumping height had increased, his reaction speed had increased, and so on. Compared to the previous Poplar Fruit, it was as if he had been reborn, and could not be called the same person. Song Jiwen, who often hung out with Poplar Fruit, should have felt it the most, but he was born with thick nerves, and attributed these changes to Poplar Fruit's second growth, Poplar Fruit's growth again. Poplar Fruit dribbled the ball, and made a gesture to break through Uncle Dao's side, but Uncle Dao did not move. He judged that Poplar Fruit was making a fake move to trick him. But when Poplar Fruit saw that he did not move, he took advantage of the situation to make a fake move. Poplar Fruit was very fast, and before he could fully react, he easily passed him. "There's still me," Uncle Jean roared as he came up to meet him. Yonghua laughed mischievously and jumped up high. Uncle Jean gritted his teeth and jumped, using his thick arms to form a shield in front of Poplar Fruit. But how could Poplar Fruit be blocked by him so easily? He lowered his body in midair and went out under Uncle Jin's arms. At this time, Poplar Fruit's amazing ability to stay in the air was demonstrated. Uncle Jean could not hold on any longer, and his body began to fall under the effect of the Earth's gravity. He was horrified to find that Poplar Fruit's body was still slowly rising after he went out. At this time, Poplar Fruit's body stretched out, and his movements were exactly the same as Uncle Dao's. He turned around and hooked his hand. The basketball bounced on the white line and accurately fell into the basket. Clap, 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 clap. There was a warm applause from the sidelines. Poplar Fruit then realized that, at some point, the people who were waiting for their turn in the next few courts had gathered around to watch this great offensive battle. Poplar Fruit's superb individual ability and the tactical cooperation of the three uncles were almost at the professional level. It was rare to see such a scene on such a court. And this time, Poplar Fruit's clever turnaround layup against the defense of the three opponents was also a feast for the eyes of the onlookers. Too strong. The three uncles smiled bitterly and felt helpless. They had received professional team coach training in their unit's basketball team. But in the face of Poplar Fruit, who could beat three people by himself, they felt powerless. It was too much of a bug. They were not as strong as him, not as fast as him, and not as high as him. It was simply unbeatable. After that, the uncles could no longer stop Poplar Fruit and the others. As long as Poplar Fruit entered the vicinity of the 3-second zone, the inside line would be in a state of panic. The three uncles had no choice but to let go of the others and surround him. However, Poplar Fruit was always able to jump high, either to shoot in the air at close range or to pass to Song Jiwen and the others. The uncles struggled for 3 rounds, but in the end, they were defeated by the young man again. This battle almost established Poplar Fruit's undefeated legend in this court. Because even the three uncles, who had won many rounds in a row, were turned around when they had a 2-0 lead. No one could stop Poplar Fruit's winning streak anymore. The winning streak continued until Poplar Fruit and the others were tired and took the initiative to ask for a rest. Poplar Fruit was sweating profusely as he drank the water that Kitten brought back. He smiled and teased his daughter who had just woken up. Uncle Gene staggered up and greeted Poplar Fruit with a smile. He looked at Kiki in the baby stroller and asked, "Xiaoyang, is this your child?" Poplar Fruit looked kindly at Kiki and smiled, "Yes. She is my daughter." "This is your wife." Uncle Gene pointed to Kitten next to him. "No, she is Song Jiwen's girlfriend." Poplar Fruit was stunned and shook his hand with a smile. Song Jiwen was running over eagerly. Ah Feng, who was drinking water next to them, asked in surprise, "Brother Yang, you have a daughter. She looks so young." "Yes, I thought you were only in your early 20s. Uncle Gene laughed. "I am very young." Poplar Fruit said gloomily, "I am only 23 years old this year." He smiled bitterly in his heart. Since he had Kiki, he seemed to have bid farewell to his youth. The last time he was called uncle by a girl who was only a few years older. He didn't know why, but when he thought of Fong Bei Bei who kept calling him weird uncle, his heart felt sweet. Was he a masochist? Uncle Gene opened his mouth and patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder with a bitter smile. "The younger generation will surpass us in time." He finally asked the question he wanted to ask the most, "Xiaoyang, did you graduate from a sports school? And you are a professional player?" Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, "No, I graduated from an ordinary university." "You can play so well from an ordinary university?" Uncle Gene found it hard to believe. He said, "I think your level is comparable to those people in the professional team." Yes. Song Jiwen also interrupted and said, "Lao Gua, are you on steroids today? You are so fierce." "Go to hell." Poplar Fruit ran over and kicked his butt. "No. Kitty, save me." Song Jiwen hugged his butt and ran around, hiding behind Kitten. Everyone was amused by Song Jiwen, this clown, and laughed heartily. Chapter 48. It's so slippery. How do I do it? Poplar Fruit looked at the sugar pills in the small bowl. Kiki was lying in the baby stroller next to him, looking at her father with her big round eyes. Today was the day of the appointment to give Kiki her first polio vaccination. Poplar Fruit took her to the hospital early and waited in line to feed her the sugar pills. In the end, the nurse just took out the sugar pills from the refrigerator and gave them to him. She asked him to go to the side and grind them with the small bowl and spoon she brought. However, the sugar pills were too difficult to control. Poplar Fruit tried several times but couldn't press them down with the spoon. "Let me do it." The nurse, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but laugh. She reached out and took the bowl from his hand. She used a spoon to hold the sugar pill, and then let it roll along the bottom of the bowl. She slowly increased the force, and within a few seconds, the sugar pill was broken into pieces. "Amazing!" Poplar Fruit couldn't help but exclaim. Her hands were too dexterous. The nurse smiled. She picked up the water bottle next to her and added a little water. Then, she carefully ground the pills with the spoon so that the remaining pieces gradually melted into the water. "Okay, you can feed it to her slowly." The nurse handed the small bowl back to him and was busy with the other parents. "Hey, wait." Poplar Fruit touched the small bowl and felt that something was wrong. He quickly shouted, "Why is the water cold?" "You can't use hot water to eat sugar pills," the nurse turned around and said. It turned out that the polio vaccine used live attenuated vaccine, which was very sensitive to heat. If it was given hot water or drank hot water after eating, the vaccine virus would be killed, and the vaccine wouldn't work. "Come on, Kiki, open your mouth," Poplar Fruit whispered. He squatted down and adjusted the back of the baby stroller so that Kiki could sit up straight. Then, he held the small bowl with his left hand and put it under Kiki's chin. He scooped up half a spoonful of water with his right hand and touched Kiki's mouth with the spoon. Kiki lowered her head and looked at the little spoon. Her eyes were filled with confusion. She looked at her father as if asking what this was. As far as she knew, the one who fed her food was a soft pacifier. Kiki wouldn't open her mouth until she saw the pacifier. But where was he going to find a milk bottle for her? Today, Poplar Fruit didn't bring her milk bottle when they went out because the doctor said that she shouldn't drink milk for the first 2 hours and half an hour to an hour after taking the sugar pills. I don't believe I can't handle you. Poplar Fruit put down the spoon and touched her little nose. When Kiki's little nose was scratched by her father's finger, she opened her mouth and smiled. But when Poplar Fruit picked up the spoon and put it near her mouth, she closed it again, as if she was playing tricks on him. Poplar Fruit was both angry and amused. He thought of a solution. He picked up the little spoon, dipped some water in Kiki's mouth, and then took it away. Because there was water on her mouth, Kiki smacked her lips and licked it with her little tongue. Her eyes lit up and she began to look at the little spoon that she was very resistant to just now. Hee. Poplar Fruit smiled as his evil plan succeeded. The water made from the sugar pills was sweet. Just like honey, of course, it wasn't that sweet. There wasn't a child who didn't like sweet things. As long as she tasted the sweetness, he wasn't afraid that she wouldn't take the bait. Poplar Fruit scooped up half a spoon of the sugar water again and put it in front of Kiki's mouth. Before it could touch her little lips, Kiki opened her mouth like a little bird waiting to be fed. Poplar Fruit put the spoon in and gently poured it into Kiki's mouth. Kiki immediately drank it clean and even licked the part of her mouth that was touched by the spoon with her tongue. After that, she looked at her father longingly. In this way, Poplar Fruit smoothly made Kiki drink the water made from the sugar pills. After observing for a while and confirming that there were no adverse reactions, the nurse let Poplar Fruit leave. Poplar Fruit walked on the street with the baby stroller and looked at the time. It seemed to be very early. It was only 10 o'clock. It was rare for him to come out today, so he didn't have to go back so early. Poplar Fruit had always been a very homebody. Ever since he moved into his new home, Poplar Fruit hadn't gone out for a walk. At the end of June, Duan Shueching had invited Poplar Fruit to attend her graduation ceremony, but Poplar Fruit didn't go. At the same time last year, Lu Yunran had come to Poplar Fruit's graduation ceremony. Under the sad atmosphere of having to live separately after graduation, the two of them were almost naked at night. Other than the last line of defense, Poplar Fruit had conquered almost every territory of Lu Yunran's. Now, the sweetness had become a memory. Poplar Fruit didn't want to go back to that kind of scene. Seeing things for no reason made him think of her and evoke the sorrow buried deep in his heart. In July, Song Jiwen also started to get busy. He had a lot of reports to write. He couldn't even get away on weekends, so naturally, he didn't want to drag Poplar Fruit everywhere. Therefore, Poplar Fruit simply stayed in his room and worked as a translator to earn money and learn German. Earning money was fine. With his focus on his work, he completed 3 urgent missions with high bounties in the past 2 weeks and earned a total of 40,000 yuan. However, his progress in learning German wasn't as fast as when he was learning French. Those magical words and the classification of parts of speech made Poplar Fruit racked his brains. However, he wasn't in a hurry. He didn't expect to be able to understand a language in a few days. That wasn't realistic. After blindly strolling around the streets for a while, Poplar Fruit actually walked to the baby shop that he frequented the most. Standing at the door, Poplar Fruit looked at Kiki lying in the baby stroller and found it funny. Today, Poplar Fruit originally wanted to buy something for himself, but in the end, he didn't buy anything. In the end, he still had to spend money on his daughter. Since he was here, he might as well go in and take a look. The air conditioner was on in the shop. Although it wasn't very cold, Poplar Fruit still covered Kiki with an extra blanket before going in. After picking 2 cans of milk powder, Poplar Fruit suddenly remembered that he hadn't bought any toys for Kiki since she was young. Of course, the little yellow duck in the bath didn't count. Under the guidance of the waiter, Poplar Fruit came to the toy section. There were so many types of toys. Poplar Fruit once again felt the potential of the children's market. The floor and shelves were filled with all kinds of toys. Some were for babies less than a year old, and some were for preschoolers. Which ones should I pick? Poplar Fruit pushed the stroller while searching. Kiki didn't want any plush toys. She quickly entered the stage of gnawing on everything. Plush toys were so dirty. As long as they were rolled on the ground, they would be covered in dust. Even if they were on the bed, if they were exposed to the air for a long time, bacteria would climb onto them. He didn't want any balloon toys either. What if he accidentally exploded it and hit Kiki's eyes? He also didn't want any toys that were too big or too heavy. Not to mention whether Kiki could play with them, it wouldn't be good if she lifted them up and hit herself. Poplar Fruit pushed Kiki. As he looked, he curled his lips and rejected many toys. The waiter next to him understood. She smiled and said to Poplar Fruit, "Sir, why don't you take a look at this baby rocking chair?" Poplar Fruit looked in the direction of the waiter's finger. It was a rocking chair with some doll pull tabs hanging from the top. The curved base was like a rocking wooden horse, and the design was smooth and round. The waiter walked over and explained to him, "Sir, our rocking chair is a rare multi-purpose baby equipment. First, I want to introduce you to its sleeping function. When the baby sleeps in it, you can rock it gently. The baby's mood will quickly stabilize and he will sleep more comfortably. Secondly, the back of the chair can be adjusted to the appropriate height. Whether it's sitting or lying down, you can let the baby maintain the healthiest posture. In addition, if the baby lies in the rocking chair and sees these colorful dolls, he will excitedly reach out to grab them. In the process, he will train his grasping ability and improve the baby's hand-eye coordination. Then, when he pulls different dolls, different music will be played from the speakers. This is good for improving the baby's hearing during play." The waiter concluded, "That is to say, if you have it, you will have a more high-tech cradle, a baby rocking chair that can adjust the back of the chair, and a toy that will help the baby's development in all aspects." It was indeed good. Poplar Fruit nodded in his heart. When he was working in the past, he always let Kiki lie in the baby stroller. It was better to buy such a rocking chair. When he didn't have time to play with her, Kiki could play by herself. However, Poplar Fruit could imagine that when he was working in front of the computer in the future, he would hear the sound of Kiki pulling the dolls and her giggling from time to time. Poplar Fruit shook his head. If it was annoying, then so be it. As long as Kiki could be happy, it was fine. After confirming that he wanted to buy the rocking chair, Poplar Fruit was not in a hurry to pay the bill. He asked the waiter to pack a rocking chair first, and then he continued to look. "This ball is not bad." Poplar Fruit picked up a small ball made of hard plastic and looked at it carefully. In fact, strictly speaking, this was not a ball with a proper orbit. It was a bit like a dodecahedron with some curvature, which meant that it could not roll very far like a football. Yongwa shook it. There were 2 bells inside the small ball. As he shook it, the bells emitted a crisp, ding-ling-ling sound. Poplar Fruit squatted down and shook the small ball in front of Kiki. The sound of the bells immediately attracted the attention of the sleepy Kiki. Poplar Fruit put it in front of Kiki's chest and smiled. "Kiki, do you like this small ball?" Chi-Chi used her hand to touch it with interest, and the little ball rolled onto her stomach. The 2 bells collided and produced a series of chimes. She was so happy that she waved her arms and couldn't stop smiling with her little mouth curled up. Cough, cough. Kiki suddenly coughed twice, not knowing if it was because she choked while laughing. "Hey, don't laugh so hard." Poplar Fruit quickly patted Kiki's back. Poplar Fruit picked up the small ball with satisfaction and asked the waiter to wrap it up. Finally, when he was about to leave, Poplar Fruit saw a wooden roly-poly. It was a naughty little monkey sitting on a round cushion. Roly-poly, this was his favorite when he was a child. Poplar Fruit was a little excited when he saw it. He remembered the big-bellied Methraea roly-poly he played with when he was a child. As long as he shook it, it would make a hee-hee sound. His childlike innocence was aroused. He flicked his finger, and the little monkey wobbled. It looked like it was going to slide off the cushion, but it just couldn't fall down. It was very interesting. It was made of wood. As long as it was cleaned regularly, it wouldn't be very dirty. Poplar Fruit thought. Poplar Fruit picked up a roly-poly and pushed Kiki to the cashier. He bought 3 toys today, including milk powder, and spent a total of more than 1,000 yuan. Of course, most of the money was spent on the rocking chair. The rocking chair alone cost 600 yuan, but Poplar Fruit didn't think the cost of the rocking chair was more than 200 yuan. Although he felt like he was being ripped off by an unscrupulous manufacturer, Poplar Fruit was still very willing to pay the money. Weren't all parents like this? As long as it was for the child, it was worth it no matter how much money was spent. Chapter 49. Dong Dong, Dang Dang. Another round of music came from behind. Poplar Fruit was already trying his best to endure it. Every few minutes, Kiki would lie in her toy rocking chair and pull a doll. Before the music stopped, the music from behind would continue. Buying this toy rocking chair yesterday was really asking for trouble. Poplar Fruit had already been interrupted by her several times. Don't be noisy. Kiki, listen to me. At first, Poplar Fruit would turn his head and persuade her. After all, being a kind father had always been Poplar Fruit's pursuit. Ahem, Kiki coughed lightly, then continued to giggle. When they came back yesterday, Kiki coughed a little. However, Poplar Fruit felt that it shouldn't be a big problem because the cough wasn't very serious and wasn't very frequent. Therefore, Poplar Fruit just gave her a little more water to drink. Poplar Fruit really underestimated his daughter's active personality. If he didn't turn his head, Kiki would still be playing with the doll in front of her. When Poplar Fruit turned his head to look at her, she seemed to be encouraged and became more lively. Not only did she pull the doll continuously, but she also sang at the top of her lungs. Of course, no one in this world could understand what she was singing, but the sound that came out of her extraordinary throat was also unbearable. Therefore, Poplar Fruit would rather endure the sound of the rocking chair than turn his head to provoke Kiki and experience her super high decibel divine song. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe in. The internal martial arts in his mind came in handy at this time. Poplar Fruit closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing. Then, he entered a mysterious state of meditation, but it wasn't really meditation. In such a state, Yanghua felt that the only thing left in the world was her and the computer in front of her. The other scenes and noises had all disappeared to who knows where. In fact, he did not leave the room. He was only using self-regulation to temporarily seal off his hearing, which was not useful for translation, so that he would not be disturbed by the noise. After the world was quiet, Yanghua realized that her translation speed had increased by nearly 20%. Her translation efficiency had increased by nearly 20%. Poplar Fruit thought happily as he typed on the computer. He didn't expect that the inner chi cultivation method would have such a wonderful effect. Poplar Fruit was quite competent. Every half an hour, he would come out of his meditative state and look after Kiki. Kiki might have had too much fun. After an hour, she was so tired that she fell asleep. Poplar Fruit could finally breathe a sigh of relief. At night, when he was surfing the internet, Poplar Fruit's QQ suddenly blinked. He clicked on it and saw that it was a chat message from a high school classmate. Poplar Fruit remembered that this classmate went back to his hometown to work in a large state-owned enterprise after he graduated from university. They had not contacted each other except for the last spring festival party. Today, he suddenly contacted him. What's the matter? Poplar Fruit chatted with him for a while and finally got to the point. He typed, "Yesterday, I saw Yunran." Poplar Fruit's body trembled. He hadn't seen this name for a long time. Did she really go back to her hometown? Yanghua hesitated for a moment before typing, "Is that so? How is she now?" His classmate continued to type. He asked curiously, "You don't know? Weren't you together?" "We broke up." Poplar Fruit paused for a while and typed this line. "Broke up? How come? You were so close these years. I saw you at the party last time." His classmate asked in surprise. Poplar Fruit said bitterly, "It's a long story. I'm sorry." His classmate said, "I didn't know it was like this." "It's okay. Go on. How is she now?" Poplar Fruit did not know why. He was eager to know Lu Yunran's recent situation, but he was also a little afraid of hearing some news that he did not want to hear. I saw her yesterday and felt that she was in a good state of mind. His classmate typed this line. He hesitated for a while and said everything he saw. But I only saw her from afar, in the Peninsula Cafe. But there was a man sitting opposite her. Poplar Fruit felt his throat dry. His right hand clenched into a fist. His knuckles were a little white, and his fingernails dug deep into his palm. Blood seeped out of his palm. I see. Poplar Fruit typed these 3 words after a long time. I mainly wanted to talk to you about this. But since you guys have broken up, Poplar Fruit, don't think so much. There are plenty of fish in the sea, right? His classmate felt a little guilty and quickly typed to comfort Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit could not see clearly what his classmate said after that. He only felt that his mind was in a mess, and there were 2 voices arguing. One of the voices was sharp and mean. Wake up. Poplar Fruit, you have to face reality. There is no possibility between you 2 anymore. The other voice comforted Poplar Fruit. No, you have so many years of history. You have to believe that she will come back. Don't lie to yourself. The first voice refuted. You know in your heart that she will not go back. Look, she has already moved forward. Look, she has already walked together with another man. Why are you still so stubborn? The second voice's response was a little weak. How do you know that she has already started over? Maybe that man just happened to appear at the table across from her and was just trying to hit on her? Perhaps that man is just her cousin. Cousin? Have you watched too many dramas? The first voice said sarcastically. The 2 voices in his mind intertwined, and in the end, there was only a roar left in his mind. His ears were buzzing, and he could not stop. Opening the fridge, Poplar Fruit pulled out a dozen bottles of beer that Song Jiwen had put inside, and pried open all the caps. He tilted his head back and drank bottle after bottle. Some of the alcohol foam spilled out and mixed with his tears. Poplar Fruit really did not want to believe that Lu Yunran had walked together with another man not long after breaking up with him, but his rationality told him that what his classmate said today was very likely true. Moreover, even if this was just a misunderstanding, it would still happen in the future. It was only a matter of time. Whether Poplar Fruit could accept it or not, Lu Yunran would eventually put on a white wedding dress and become someone else's bride. How many times had Poplar Fruit thought that he had already let it go, but in the end, his heart still felt like it was being cut by a knife. Of all the things in the world, love was the most torturous. Drinking away one's sorrows was even more sorrowful. Poplar Fruit sat in the corner of the living room. The empty beer bottles were thrown all over the floor. His head was dizzy and heavy, and his whole body was uncomfortable. There was a burning anger in his chest. The cliché line in the movies, "You are happier than me," was all made up by the scriptwriter. Poplar Fruit pointed at the empty air and cursed, his voice muffled. If he had loved her deeply, how could he have left so casually after saying those words? If he had loved her deeply, how could he bear to let her fall into someone else's arms? Would she be happy? I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't King believe it. Poplar Fruit was already incoherent. Suddenly, he hugged his knees and head and started to cry, just like my daughter who had been wronged. As he cried, he became drunk. Poplar Fruit's head tilted and he lay on the floor in a daze. In his dream, Yang's clothes seemed to be ragged, and he was crawling in a boundless desert. The scorching sun above his head evaporated every bit of water in his body. He only felt that his limbs were weak, and his mouth was dry. But as far as the eye could see, it was all yellow sand. Where could he find an oasis? Where could he find a water source? His heart was filled with despair. After an unknown amount of time, Poplar Fruit suddenly felt his heart palpitate. How long had it been since he had experienced this feeling? Even in his dream, Poplar Fruit would never forget it. Kiki. Poplar Fruit suddenly opened his eyes and sat up straight. His head was dizzy and Poplar Fruit felt a splitting headache. He really wanted to drink water. But he didn't care about this. He struggled to get up and ran towards the bedroom. Running too fast, Poplar Fruit didn't notice that there was a bottle under his feet. He directly stepped on it. With a slip, Poplar Fruit only felt his left foot suddenly slip forward. His whole body couldn't control it and fell backwards. In his drunken state, Poplar Fruit's control over his body was not as good as when he was moving forward. Originally, he could twist his body in the air and land steadily, but now he could only fall heavily on the ground like a normal person. Ah! Poplar Fruit felt a strong vibration in his chest. A liquid almost went into his nostrils. If it wasn't for his strong body, a normal person's bones would have fallen apart. When he slipped just now, the bottom of his right foot seemed to have been scratched by a bottle cap. But Poplar Fruit didn't care about the injury. He pulled the chair up and limped into the bedroom. The bedroom was quiet, and Chi-Chi seemed to still be sleeping obediently on the bed. But Poplar Fruit believed in his intuition. It came from the telepathy that was connected by blood. Something must have happened to Kiki. Opening the mosquito net, Poplar Fruit reached his hand in and touched Kiki. So hot. Poplar Fruit felt that Kiki's little arm temperature was much higher than usual. Then he touched Kiki's forehead. It was really hot. It was as if there was a small stove under her skin. Fever? Poplar Fruit picked up Kiki. His hands were shaking non-stop. He softly called out for Kiki, but Kiki was already unconscious. Poplar Fruit panicked. He felt like he was going to lose something. He even thought of the sugar pills he fed her yesterday. So hot. Fever? Could it be that the temperature had exceeded 40 degrees? If it exceeded 40 degrees, wouldn't it burn her brain? Could it be a virus infection? Could it be that virus? No, don't scare yourself. But what if it was? Polio. Could Kiki be? Poplar Fruit didn't dare to think about it. His mind was in a mess. He carried Kiki and walked around the room. He was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. He had to go to the hospital quickly. Poplar Fruit finally thought of this key point. He didn't even put on his shoes. He opened the door and rushed out. Running to the elevator, Poplar Fruit turned back. He came to Song Jiwen's door and banged on it. Song Jiwen had driven his father's car back these few days. It was late at night. Almost everyone was asleep. The whole building was quiet. Poplar Fruit suddenly used his fist to violently pound on the door. Bang! 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 The sound echoed throughout the corridor and the stairs. It was as if the ground was shaking. Fortunately, there were no other residents on this floor. Otherwise, it would definitely disturb others. I'm coming. Stop knocking. After a while, Song Jiwen opened the door in his pajamas and rubbed his eyes. He was shocked to see Poplar Fruit's messy hair, red eyes, and reeking of alcohol. Lao Gua, what happened to you? Song Jiwen pointed at Poplar Fruit's foot and asked. Poplar Fruit was barefoot. His right foot drew a line of blood on the smooth tiles. Come with me. Kiki has a fever. It's very serious. Poplar Fruit's nostrils flared. He pulled Song Jiwen and was about to walk out. Wait. Song Jiwen quickly stopped Poplar Fruit. The situation was urgent. He didn't dare to delay. He said, I'll go get the key now. You should also put on your shoes quickly. Did you bring your ID? Poplar Fruit was completely panicked. He put on his shoes without even wearing socks. When he left, he was in a trance. Even the door was closed by Song Jiwen. Song Jiwen quickly put on his clothes and comforted Poplar Fruit. Don't worry. Kiki will be fine. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.